this City Council work session to order tonight at 6 o'clock p.m. on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. First on the agenda tonight is the Tim subdivision. Boyd Brown is applicant.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is the Tim subdivision. You've seen this a couple of times in the past, including on March 7th, 2017. Following the Planning Commission and City Council work sessions, the applicant submitted a new layout to the city on June 26th. So it's located in the northern part of the city. Just for point of orientation, north is top. Mouse isn't working. The current land use map has neighborhood commercial to the front and business park in the rear. Right now, the current zone is agricultural. The couple proposal changes that came through, one of them was the removal of the mixed use request along with the residential units. The request also adjusted the layout of the southern office buildings to remove the dead end parking stalls in response to Commission and Council feedback. The proposal also contains flex office space and storage units. So north is up, Redwood Road again. The storage units are proposed here. The mixed use was proposed kind of back in this area, which is now been removed in exchange for regional commercial to the front, abutting Redwood Road, and the request is the same in the northern part of the site. Again, this is the concept plan. You can see the flex office spaces proposed. Sorry. This is a color rendering of what it could potentially look like with a convenience store potential at the corner of Redwood Road and Hardman. Retail office type buildings here. Again, town storage and the flex office space here. Staff recommends the City Council review and discuss the proposal and give the applicant informal feedback on both the proposed zones and land uses on the concept plan. The applicant is here to answer any questions.
Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm glad to be here in front of you guys again. We've taken the feedback that we got from staff, from you guys, and from Planning Commission, and been working hard on this. We still have some things to figure out on the off-site improvements, but we spent quite a considerable amount of time going out in the market and studying these different zone year ordinance and what products we feel like would fit and actually sell. And that we'd be successful and also be a success for the city. So I don't really have, Kara's very familiar with the project. I think she presented it well.
Perfect. Okay, Councilwoman Barch.
No, this is great. I appreciate the changes that have been made in response to our comments. I think this is much preferable, especially where you got rid of that mixed use area that was kind of an awkward layout. I think this is a good idea. It'll be interesting to see how it looks like it's also some RV parking, perhaps as part of the storage units is proposed.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure, we've never really dealt with that in our code. I don't know quite how that's handled. So if that's part of the storage unit site or how that works out. So, but I think that it's a much preferable site, and look forward to getting all the off-site stuff worked out. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Shelley, in conjunction with that, and I think you made a great observation, they would be able to use the same site manager and security to handle both of those products. So it really teamed up nicely when we looked at kind of the overall concept.
Okay. Councilman Porter.
I'd agree. I think that this is this looks great, and I think I appreciate you taking the feedback that you're given and coming up with this. I think that this will work well. Are you still working with the interior landowner?
Working with, as in communicating, yes.
But you're not planning on kind of starting on your own?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've kept them abreast of all of our progress, and they've had every opportunity to participate financially and actively, but the timing is just,
Okay.
I think they're probably a year or two behind me.
I think this layout, more so than the previous one, would easily transition into that when they decide to develop, that they'll be able to come in and kind of make use of their land. So I think that's a benefit to the changes. And then, yeah, like, I like it. My only, I guess, you guys are still working on the offsites and stuff like that, so.
So I think we've come a long way with the offsites. There's going to obviously have to be some things that we're going to have to amend. We're looking at trying to partner with, other developments in the area. And so I think we've come a long way. I think we've resolved pretty much all of the major concerns.
Okay.
Can you think of anything that's outstanding, either of you?
Well, we're clear on what the costs are and what the critical path is, and I guess at our public meeting when we get there and we have proposals to make, and we'll have to work through some development agreements, but.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I think that this is kind of what we were all hoping to see, something along these lines, so it's great.
Thank you.
Wilden?
Similarly, much improved concept. I like that this was where we had some homes. So that was a good move to pull those out. I mean, this is a relatively close to Harvest Hills, but some of the storage areas will be far enough east and down that that's not that big of a deal. The question for staff, so we're asking for regional commercial. Is that just for the gas station? Is that the only reason we're asking for that?
Yes, as far as I understand, the regional commercial is in response to a possible convenience store.
Is there thought that would be used for, is there any other reason you'd be looking?
Yeah, I went through your code over and over, and we originally approached this with mixed use, and because of the residential component and some of the size restrictions on mixed use, we kind of wanted to move away from that. And I didn't feel like the neighborhood commercial gave quite the flexibility, and there's a new one, I can't remember what it is, the community. I looked at that. What I've seen is I've had some demand for some retail and office, and the regional commercial right there on Redwood just seemed to give the most flexibility. And the one, I'm pretty close to being locked in on a C-store. I really feel like that's the right use for that site, but I'm still pretty open on what will happen on the northern piece, and the regional commercial just seemed, the first plan, if you remember, we had mixed use, regional commercial, and it just, the more I studied the table of allowed uses, the regional commercial all above the canal seemed to make the most sense.
No, I think that's fair. Is there anything in regional commercial that, I can't think of anything.
If you think about the most intense uses, you've got your most intense uses and the most quote-unquote undesirable uses, which aren't in certain scenarios, obviously, would be like your gas stations, your tire stores or automotive type uses, and your big boxes. And I'm not sure any of these lots are, maybe one of the lots is big enough for a big box, possibly.
Well, the nice thing about the regional commercial, part of my thought process on this is that if a big box at retail is a little slow right now, but if something like an IFA store or something of that size did come along, we could certainly add one of the other parcels and have enough space to do that on Redwood. It seems appropriate. I'm not planning on that because I don't have anyone in place for that.
No, and I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some unintended consequence that we were going to create. And if we were, I'd want to put, when we look at the rezone, maybe conditional. Not a conditional, but tied to some plan. We don't need to do that here. So that's all I had. So thank you.
Councilman McComber?
So I do like the new approach that you're taking. I do have a couple questions. The house there on the south, is that one of the owners that's part of all of this? Or are they just stuck now with all of this RV parking and regional commercial around their house?
I own the house,
That's your house?
yeah, and I have a tenant in there right now who knows there's development going on, and I think sooner or later that'll be demolished and something else will be there, but it's not, I'm not at a point where I can afford to, or it makes sense to go knock down the house. I think as a future phase, something different will happen, but, so the unintended, I'm the owner of the property, so if there's storage units that I build next to it, it'll be on me.
Yeah. My concern is in our code, we require feathering from residential units, and they're not feathering at all here. Since you're the owner, I guess I'm not going to maybe make too much of a stink here, but at the same time, I think that we need to be, huh?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, are we not actually zoning over the top of the house regional commercial also?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it would be a non-conforming existing use.
Yeah.
Are we zoning the 3 lots, the big lots in the middle, as regional commercial, or are we leaving those? What's the land use map show that as?
It's a neighborhood commercial.
Yeah, I think that as we're working with the land use map, it might make sense to create some uniformity and consider putting that as just all regional commercial, that section, that whole, like this whole Redwood Road section. So, yeah, all above the canal, basically, and then those 3 lots below could be the same zoning as the office warehouse or whatever. I just think that it makes sense to, right now while we're doing it, and then it also helps the landowners as well as, because the landowners, their value of their home, their land goes up, and then I think it takes a little bit of the sting away from having all this go around them.
We could do that to the land use map.
Land use
We wouldn't do
map.
that to their zoning, obviously,
Not to
because
their zone
it's
until
not
there's
part
a
of this.
request. Right. We can't do a zone change on it, but we can put on the land use map. And as we've learned, land use maps have a lot more power in Saratoga Springs than you would think in some cities. But over the years, land use maps have gone to court in Saratoga Springs. So I just think that it would be smart just to have that consistency. My other last question is that little strip of Lehigh next to that new road, is there room for them to build anything or do anything of consequence there?
No, it's a nuisance strip. Well, there's a retaining wall there, but there's a public utilities strip in there, and it's owned by the, actually Edge Homes, or the affiliates of Edge Homes who are building the exchange, own the land. I have access rights to cross it, but it's unfortunate that it's there, really.
Yeah, I just would hate for that to be this strip of dead weeds between the road and development, because even though it is Lehigh, people would assume it is Saratoga Springs and your development. And so hopefully, I mean, Edge Homes is pretty good to work with. So if we can maybe from a staff perspective even help reach out to Edge Homes and talk to them and see if there's some way we could incorporate, while you're spending a lot of money potentially for landscaping and all of that, if there's a way that they could coordinate and work with you.
It's been a while since we've talked, but we've talked about some potential land swaps and different things from the roadway. And I mean, neither of us, them nor me, wants that to be a, and that's the gateway of their huge project right down there too, so they'll want it to look nice as well.
Right, and just coordinating, and then so obviously the proposed road that runs down by the gas station and that other building, you have rights to connect to that road?
Yes.
Only other thing I have is for staff. I think there was a mistake in the documents. The motion right under that picture in the documents, it talks about approving Legacy Farms plats 4A, 4B, 4C, and 4D with the findings and conditions. So we need to make sure that, I appreciate the efforts of duplicating and not having to always rewrite things and copying and using certain templates, but we have to obviously, when these are public records, make sure, and I can't believe Shelley didn't catch it.
It's not what it is, it's actually part of the planning commission minutes.
Yeah, and so, but it was the motion made underneath.
Right, but then
this
it's
one here.
just because it just needed to be crossed out is all it was.
Right, it needs to be crossed out, but I still caught something that Shelley didn't say. So, and so then, that's all for me. And I think that obviously I think the RV parking is a hugely intelligent thing to do. I think that's going to be very high demand. There's always been requests for that. I've heard many people asking me about that. So. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Do you have any other questions from the council, or?
So I can start building now?
Closer.
Thanks. We'll see you in a couple weeks, I think,
Okay.
hopefully.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next on our agenda tonight is Wildflower The Springs.
So while Nora's getting that pulled up, oh, go ahead, she's ready.
I'm ready. So, a couple years ago, the Springs station did approve, and then the revised plan. For all the wild. There are a number of those kinds of so I will turn it over.
And if I could, one of the things they're in the due diligence process of looking to acquire this particular property. One of the things that we're particularly interested in is working with them with ACUB and trying to do some sort of buffer. And so we've got some ideas, and again, because there's a lot of moving parts, we wanted to just bring a concept to you in a work session so that we could kind of flesh out some early ideas so that they kind of have an idea as they're doing their due diligence, as they're working through this particular process, so that they can answer some of the questions and be queued up. So, on up.
Thanks for having us. Nate got stuck at the gate with a broken airplane, so you guys finally get to see me again. I've been hiding out for a while from you. Yeah, we're really excited to be in front of you. We worked hard with our zoning and our community plan on Wildflower a few years ago. We're in the middle of platting and selling several phases that will be in front of you on Wildflower here in the next couple of months. But we had a couple of unique opportunities come together at the same time, and to us they really, the timing was right, and it really makes sense for us to fix some things that have come to light over time, as time's gone on, as well as really as we add volume to the community, it allows us to really rethink and go to another level on things like parks and open space and really master planning on how this thing can live. Wildflower with its 1492 units is a big community, but adding another large chunk of units really adds even some more livability and things we can do within the community. We're really dealing with, it's actually four different property owners, so several things have come together at once. So 5 if you include UDOT, but that's all said and done. The original Wildflower went from what I'll call the edge of Aspen Hills and goes on that military road there to the west. Originally, the ground to the south of that was owned by the Collins family. That's the family we bought the rest of Wildflower from. They weren't ready to sell the rest at that point. So we had included it in the community plan, but we didn't buy it. And at that point, A lot of things were up in the air, and it was currently at that point zoned all commercial. They wanted to keep it that, so we basically kept it exactly as it already was, but put it within the community plan. In addition, we've also got here the Springs property, and then we've also brought in John Hadfield. We're not intending to buy his property, but just working as good neighbors to figure out some of the issues as he was brought into the city along with the Springs annexation. So at this point, those are kind of the components. When we designed the wildflower component itself, it was all, the portion that we purchased was all residential. So we had designed, other than the corridor, we had residential on both sides. We had any density that we got went on the west side of the corridor. And for the most part, we're not looking to change that, but one of the things that's changed over the last couple of years as we've worked with UDOT and finalized the sale of that ground, and they've finished design and are now building later this year frontage roads. A lot of the on-ramps and off-ramps and where lights will be and specifics to that have become more clear over time. And so in some of the wildflower ground where we had residential, it becomes more clear that long-term it probably should be some sort of commercial use on the west side of the corridor. You've got a hard off of what will be the frontage roads, but even eventually the freeway. Whereas further to the south, they've actually got no accesses off of that long-term, and it really is going to be difficult for commercial viability for the whole section. So the one component that we've proposed is in that section going from, bringing some of the commercial down to the interchange, still on the west side, looking to provide some stuff right there off the off-ramp, and then pushing some residential into the ground to the south, and then for the most part keeping the rest commercial use. But there's one kind of landlocked island, it's not landlocked, but from a commercial standpoint, they're on the far southeast, that in our minds could be a great active adult. Perhaps it's just residential, but something of residential use because of where it's ending up with access on and off the frontage, and ultimately, these different corridor roads that are coming together. Additionally, without getting into further detail, I'll be open to questions and clarifications on that as as I get done with the summary. But on the Springs portion, there had been a lot of work prior to the prior developer entitling that ground, on working with other local municipalities and Camp Williams on buffering that ground between Camp Williams and the residential. And as Mark mentioned, we'd like to work closely with the city and with the ACUB money and with Camp Williams on readjusting this. And so what we've actually done here is, the intent is the area that we've put in tan, and the lines may ultimately, we haven't met and finalized anything with Camp Williams, but generally that area, to preserve that and work through means to preserve that, use it for open space, use it for other things besides houses that are currently allowed to go there. With that, though, we have kept some density there, not because we're looking to build it there, but we've had to consolidate the density into a smaller amount of ground, which to justify working with Camp Williams and working through that process. It's a lot of ground that the prior developer was expecting to develop and sell lots, and so there's a combination of working through that and how that's either sold or dedicated or combination thereof, how that works, and there has to be some density to help offset some of that and make that work. So I wanted to throw that out up front so everyone understands kind of the direction. Nothing's finalized. We've got a lot of work to do, but that's the intent there. I know, and then the last component is Hadco's, I know they have a lot of other ground here, but my understanding, that square is the portion of his ground that was brought into the city as part of the annexation. Long-term, he'd like to do some sort of flex office, industrial, something there, but obviously, as we all know, that'll be in the distant future, but he'd like to get some entitlements or some clarity of what he's looking to do there. And we agreed to bring that in as part of this discussion. So, in addition, one of the other things that we've, and I don't know if you have it on yours, but it was on the flash drive. We've been working a lot on the parks, and we could, we're open to discussing any of that here or meeting with the Parks Committee, but we're really excited about some of the things that are coming together. I'm a big cyclist. We've worked a lot on adding significant mountain bike and bike functions and so forth to the west, and added to that things like pump tracks and cyclocross tracks and learner tracks and things like that, as well as some unique uses that we're looking at closer to the interchange of some more urban feeling open space of things teed up for more like farmers markets and things like that. And I don't know if this is the appropriate place to really get into it from a starting level. It may be with the Parks Committee, but we're really excited. We're working with landmark design with Mark Vlasic and working through some of those designs heavily. But we think we had a great parks plan to begin with. We think this is even coming together better, with all the ground together. So that's kind of a high-level summary, and looking for feedback of, kind of the direction we're going, shifting some of this around. We know after spending so much time working through the community plan how important it is not to touch densities and anything east of the corridor, and we've been super sensitive to that. Adding to that, we already have buyers looking to go into a lot of that residential ground to the east anyway, but the west is the area we've focused on adjusting some of those product types. Do you have anything else?
So I appreciate the creativity and the thought processes that have gone into this. I think it is smart to bring in the land into the wildflower because more houses, more buildings obviously cover HOA dues better, it's more reasonable, the economies of scale, all of that, it makes sense. A couple things, just initially from a concept, I've got some concerns with. I would get rid of this whole flex thing because once you put industrial and storage there, all the hairs in the back of my head stand straight up, especially as I'm looking across SR 73, and I'm thinking industrial office space, industrial buildings, and manufacturing. So that really does scare me, if you would, from seeing all of that there on the main road coming in on SR 73. Also, the density compression, I get the military civic space. A lot of that, if I went to my old plan, and I wish I would have brought it, I was out with my family and I didn't have a chance to stop home and get it, but there was a huge ravine or hole in the ground anyway that had no ability to develop, and a lot of that is what's now going to the military civic, so no homes were going in there, and that's where a lot of the big homes were going to go.
As a point of clarity, that green in the middle, that is the hole. The tan is all flat. If you actually drive out there, it's flat farmland buildable.
The military civic part?
Yes, the green in the middle, in between the civic and the single family.
That's the ravine.
Is the ravine. So we haven't put anything on. We're not showing to dedicate or. The military portion is all flat farm ground.
Yeah, and it's currently being farmed as wheat fields and things like that, dry wheat up in those areas. So
it really is
that's
usable.
Where the bigger homes were going to go, correct?
That's where all the single family and a lot of that was going to go, yeah.
So you're looking to sell the land to hopefully the military for military civic use, and then also transfer all of those single family homes into increased density? You're wanting to double?
If I could, this is kind of a complex negotiation between us and the federal government for kind of pulling together an ACUB product. In order to get ACUB funds, you have to have...
You want to define ACUB funds for the people in the audience?
Let's see.
Roughly?
It's an acronym basically where you're purchasing lands. Use buffer, yep, sorry, Army compatible use buffer.
Basically, it's to buffer Camp Williams.
Yeah, in essence though, so this is going to be a pretty complex deal, and just for tonight, for illustrative purposes, they would be dedicating the acreage in the TAN, and then they would be using that as a match for acquiring the ACUB funds, acquiring a much smaller portion of ground. And so the land that is being dedicated becomes that land match and that value that the ACUB then uses to purchase. And so it's a pretty complex thing, and we haven't had a chance to work with the Paul Raymond with Camp Williams and Colonel Smith and some other folks. And so if I could, this is actually a really, it looks like it's going to be a really good opportunity for us, but we don't probably have the information or the people here to really get into too much detail tonight about it, nor have we had a chance to sit down.
So then why are we here? I'm just curious.
We just wanted to show the concept of what they're trying to do. So in essence, that would be...
So you really don't want feedback from the council? You just want to figure things out and then bring it back to the council?
No. We want to present the concept. However, the details, the nitty-gritty details are things that still have not been negotiated.
Yeah. I'm just looking at an increase of density of over 600, I think. I did quick math, 500.
Should be 425.
425? It was up there like for half a second. So from 1,700 to 2,195, and in
a big part of that is
of the
because this was all commercial on the Collins, where some of that's residential now, so that's a chunk of that.
Well, in reality, it won't be developed.
But the 170 units in the Civic won't be developed.
So then something that might be interesting to see for us is just to see what the equivalent residential units would be, the ERUs would be for what that commercial was. Just so we can kind of get an idea.
To get a good comparison, because I'm just looking at all that 400 being put on a much smaller amount of space. And so I just have commitments to the residents and to the city of Saratoga Springs that I've made very clear that, you know, certain densities, we worked really hard on this project, to your point, a few years ago, and I appreciate that things change, and I'm absolutely open to the change, but I need to make sure that multifamily housing and high-density housing are not being, I don't want to use the word snuck because I'm not thinking that through. I'm not thinking that's what's trying to be done. But when I hear it's very complex and we have to relook at this, I just want to make sure before you guys go too far down the path that that's something that I'm one of four here today who would be able to, you know, support you guys down these efforts, because you go and spend thousands of dollars redeveloping and doing all this, and then at the end of the day, I might not be able to agree. I think it's a great idea. I love the idea of cemeteries and bike paths and all of that, and open space. It's great. But, and so maybe it would be okay for the higher densities because of all the amenities we're getting. But at the same time, our propositions did not necessarily say if you get lots of amenities, then the densities are allowed. So we have to make sure that we're following the law that was passed by the residents.
Well, fully understand. There's a couple of clarifying points. They're already entitled to in their development agreement in the Springs to the multifamily.
Yeah,
so we haven't added any apartments.
Townhome units.
The townhomes are the one additional townhome pod over what they have currently is really the difference.
That's all you've added is one townhome pod?
Well, we basically changed the density to add one additional townhome pod to get to those same number of units. But another clarifying point, to Mark's point, we don't have all the details, but the ACUB money, a lot of this will be dedication, where we're not paid for the majority of this. It's not a retail value-based transaction like the UDOT sell was. This one is a much different setup than, and it's what we're really trying to do is flush it even, just to be clear. And we'll have to work through that to
roughly the 400
that.
additional units, you have one townhome that added to multifamily, and then you just move the single family somewhere else to add more? Is that what you've done?
We have, the development agreement had townhomes and apartments. We've added a second pot of townhomes within the Springs property. And basically by reducing the number of single-family, we kept the units and added another town-owned project. And that's where it nets out.
Some of the additional units you said earlier came from where you converted commercial back to residential?
Well, there's two parts. There's 170 listed on this military Civic that would not be built, but those are counted in that total. So in the Springs, we've added 170.
425 homes, you mean? Single-family units? In the 170 acres? 425 single.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at it upside down. But yeah, we've added those 425 additional to here, but they won't be built. And that would be part of the entitlement that ultimately they would be clarified. So
from just what it comes down to for me here at the end, I think the office space at that interchange on Mountain View Corridor makes sense. Again, I'm not comfortable with flex by having all that office and industrial. The one that's the Hatco product, whatever, if there's a big push in order for them to get some vested rights and they want to have that be somewhat of an industrial or whatever, I would rather you bring it forward as that than this zone. We don't have a flex zone. We don't have a commercial office industrial storage zone. So if you could look at our current allowed zones and then bring that forward, that would be really helpful. And then just for the record, I want to point out that the Mountain View Corridor Road is not up to the current agreement that we have and that what we've told UDOT. It's still showing the connection at Aspen Hills Boulevard, which does not exist. That's a dead-end road. And then also it's showing that it's cutting off the house at the end of Aspen Hills Boulevard, and UDOT has made it clear that they're able to move, they shifted some of their product within their right-of-way to prevent that home from being removed. So I just want to point out, because this is going to go in as a record, out of an official record, that is not necessarily the official alignments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Wilden?
Thank you. I like, the work you've done on the open space, and I think that'll be great for the city. Similar thoughts, on the Hadco space. I'm fine with just identifying that to meet their original vested rights. On the other ones, and I know this is just a concept plan, but when we move further down the path, we need to see more specifically what's planning there. I don't want to just say, I don't want to commit even in a drawing of something that could be industrial, because I can't commit a council 4 years down the road when it, in 4 years when it's new council, that this is our concept when it could look something else. It could go down a different path at that point. And the other thing is on, excuse me, I know this is a different type of structure than it was with UDOT, and we can look at consolidations and things like that. I just want to make sure that when we were looking at it from the UDOT aspect, we were saying, hey, this would have been, I don't remember the numbers, 1,600 homes or something like that, when in reality you would have never been able to build 1,600 homes. And then we negotiated it. I shouldn't say negotiate. We got to the point where we transferred what you would have actually been able to build, reality. So I just want, and I know you won't have those answers. Sorry, Mark, I forgot. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, with that, let's just tie whatever's in their agreement back to what you're doing so that it's very specific. That way it's not up for interpretation and it just ties back to that agreement.
Yeah, and that's fair. And so I just want to make sure that we're not saying, hey, we planned 425 homes here when it never would have been in the first place, if that makes sense. Just so we're all on the same page.
Just for clarity, why couldn't they have got that many units? I guess I don't follow that.
I don't know. Similar with the UDOT product up in Wildflower, you guys came in and said we could have, I'm just throwing numbers out, we could have built 1,800 homes because it's an R3. You would have never gotten 1,800 homes because of roads and things like that. It would have been more like 14.
I think what Councilman Wilden's referring to is the fact that generally in our old R3, you only got about 2.6 or something like that actual units to the acre. It never worked out to a full 3 units to the acre, which is one of the reasons why we went in and changed our codes. So there wasn't that mis-expectation.
So don't take me saying right now you would have never gotten 425 because I don't have that information in front of me. I just want to say let's make sure that we don't go down that path saying we could have had 1,000 units here, let's move these around. That was never the case. Is that clarified a little bit?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And could you explain where, like, the extra pod of townhomes is?
The,
Extra two? Sorry, I don't.
so the two in purple in the Springs, they already had townhomes approved, but if you look at the number of units, there's, and I don't have their agreement in front of me, but that second pod to the furthest to the west is probably the additional rough amount of townhomes compared to what they were originally vested with.
Okay. I mean, if we were to concentrate some of these down there, I mean, I think that's, so. Unless, or, I'm not gonna shoot from the hip and say we're.
Tell you later.
Okay. Councilman Porter?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for being willing to work with the camp, Williams, as well as the city to try and find a way that works for everybody and improves the situation that we kind of found ourselves in. In talking with the camp, I'm the representative to the Camp Williams, in talking with them about this area, this is the one that kept them up at night because they have firing points literally 100 feet from the border of this property, which would have made living there a miserable experience, as well as the road that goes right along the edge of the property. So I think that if we can work to work out that buffer so that it's beneficial for everyone involved, I think that's great. And I think, as was talked about, the parks and the possibility of a cemetery and stuff is, I think, something that the city needs. I'm also, we always have to take density into consideration, as you're well aware, in our city. And I can understand, it's a little bit of a moving target because so much has changed, it's kind of hard to pin down the actual changes. I just know previously, I think that the current plan that you're showing here is an improvement over what was previously allowed in the Springs, based on my just cursory look. Again, as we get more into the details, we'll figure out. But I think it's an improvement. I think that the previous plan would have had significant issues down the road. So, as far as the Hadco property, I agree. You might as well just label it as industrial. I believe they're already zoned industrial. Is that not correct?
There's some conditions with their agreement,
Right.
so we'll want to tie it back to
Tie
that.
it to whatever the agreement is, but I think that it's more transparent if people know what's going to be there rather than this blue flex space that, as was mentioned, we don't really have a flex zone. And so, I was talking with city staff and I'm like, are they planning on putting office warehouse across this entire thing? Because that's what I think of when I think flex space. So, I understand that you're not quite ready to commit, but when you come in for, a community plan amendment or whatever, we're going to need a little bit better detail on that. But yeah, and I agree that the office commercial there on the interchange probably makes sense. So in general, I'm in favor, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to try and get this ACUB deal worked out so we can all benefit from that. So thank you.
I know density is a hot button. One thing to just reiterate is that currently, however many units you can get, they can build all the way in that space that we're proposing to buffer. And we're just, in working with Mark, trying to figure out how to still make it a viable project based on the expectations of the seller, but be responsive to what the city and Camp Williams are looking for, and trying to work through that.
I think for the council on the next time, just have what the density was per buildable acre compared to what it is per buildable acre after the ACUB land would be gone.
And I want to take a second and apologize to Councilmember McComber. What we've talked about conceptually is that this actually, if it all worked the way that it theoretically, as we've discussed, it would actually, I believe, be a reduction in density based on the land that ACUB would be acquiring in certain areas and their donation. It actually would I think, bring the ground down, but that's what I can't definitively point to. And so, I mean, as we've talked about it, there's some concepts and there's still some things that we want to talk about. And so I appreciate that you're very concerned about density, but in theory, based on how this is structured, it could actually result in a net decrease in density for the overall project. And so I just...
And to clarify where that is, down to the furthest west portion, part of the ground that's, I'll call it yellow.
Orangish.
Orangish yellow. Part of that would potentially also flow into this ACUB and buffer as well. It's just, the lines are still
Are you talking about part of
finalizing
the
what
area
they
that's
is.
marked as single family?
Yes.
Yeah, that orange little chunk on that.
It's basically that dotted line is roughly where it could go to.
So, no, I mean, I appreciate that, and that obviously would be a very easy no-brainer. I'm just making it very clear that if we come back and they're trying to increase huge amounts of high multifamily housing, besides what we as a council want to do, there are laws on the books from the residents and referendum, and we don't want to open another can and have them start another process. So we need to be as mindful of what's going on and prevent that from happening, because we don't want another referendum.
So if you see that blue line right there, that's actually a water zone.
I see that, that's the fifth, because it takes you up to the next level
Water
of
zone.
water zone,
So
and it doesn't make sense to have to build that.
Yeah, the theory of the structure would be the 10 would be dedicated to the city, and then everything above that water pressure zone line would be what ACUB would actually purchase. The other 170 acres becomes the match for that, and that's just in concept. So again, that's not finalized, but in theory, though, we haven't subtracted what density would be reduced as well from what ACUB would
And obviously,
require.
that changes the whole conversation. So
Yeah.
I understand this is a concept. I just want to make it very clear where I stood in
Sure.
terms of density. Thank
And
you.
my apologies for not clarifying that for you earlier.
Quick question on page 2 of your handout, the solar array inside the ACUB, is that something Camp Williams would expand their solar, or is it something you would own privately?
And can you actually have a solar array that close to their firing points?
Yeah,
If they're
is it
concerned about
something the city would
homes, isn't that
own?
going to knock the electronic?
That we have not worked
connections
out. It's our hope, and we're studying whether or not we could actually power part of this community with a solar farm. We're working with a group. We actually have meetings tomorrow to learn more about it. So we just wanted to show that on this plan as a possible area of where that could be, because it's kind of hidden back there, so it wouldn't be in your face. So that's the only reason it's there right now. It may not work, but we want to vet it out.
And I don't know what discussions you've had. I know that the state is also looking at relocating their driving range for the public safety. So, that's another, I know that it's all kind of fluid still, so, just so you.
And as part of that, I think several of you were able to go to the ACUB meeting up at Camp Williams probably 2 months ago now, where we were able to go. And again, they've presented this. There's actually been only a few deals that have really gone forward in this state, but we're working hard to try and, queue this up, make this something that becomes very desirable that then, falls into the funding that's available. We've talked with Paul Raymond just in concept, and we're looking forward to meeting with him in the next week or two to really start hammering through some of these details. So as we bring it to you and as this materializes, we'll be able to pull it together. But part of it will be, lands being dedicated to conservation funds and being forever preserved and other things like that.
I did ask the mayor for just one other additional comment before I go to Councilman Barch. If we really are 100 feet off of that property line where they're doing live fire, that still is too close to even where you have single-family homes. And so either Camp Williams still needs to agree to move, because that is still way too close in my mind, and we need to make sure that they're legally able to still do that live fire so close to families and residential. But that's just my concern.
Well, to Council McComber's point, it was already approved to have houses right up to that line. So this is an
But now
improvement.
they're obviously saying that it's not feasible, so they're willing to come in and buy the land, so maybe they need to buy more
They want,
or acquire more.
Verify that their ACUB is probably not buying all that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the clarifications is, and we don't understand all of it, but they can't, because of the entitlements, they can't force it out. And so they can't just, we can't, it's a balance. It's not like UDOT where they need the roads and they can come and condemn you. It's not as clean cut for this, and so it's a matter of
And I
what
understand
works.
that.
But there are studies that they've done where they really have concerned areas, and then there's kind of different levels of the concern.
And I understand that, and when we had the conversation, it was clear that the homes would be feasible there, that close. And then just all of a sudden, now we're saying 100 feet off and it's not feasible. When we had it, the Camp Williams wasn't happy about it, but they didn't stop us last time. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
We haven't, I want to clarify that we haven't
They're
said
not
it's not
stopping.
feasible. We're just trying to work with everybody, including
I'm not
Mark.
saying that you didn't say it was feasible. Camp Williams didn't stop us before.
Camp Williams isn't stopping them now.
Right.
No, they're not now.
Right.
Okay. They still could come in and build. Anyway.
I know they can.
I guess there's just some confusion. It seems like people are saying the same thing in different methods or something, so. Anyway, overall, I think the plan is much improved to what it was. I think, again, combining these two communities is going to make it flow much better and work much better. I appreciate you looking at the connectivity for the different areas and the different uses. I think that the uses in their particular places are better than they were. I have some, again, like the other council members, density, the flex space, things like that, but those are things that can be worked out, that we can kind of look at and make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to as council members and making this project work. So thank you.
Okay. Do you have any other questions from the council?
I guess the only other question is, what would be the best way, or would there be interest in meeting with the Parks Committee on some of the stuff that we're actively designing? Because I think when we do ultimately bring it, different from Wildflower, our parks plan will be we're hoping to be much further detailed out and committed to, so that we can start marketing on it now instead of, hey, this might come someday and we
That's
might
definitely
see
something
it.
we've done in the past, is had Parks Committee meet with developers working on larger parks and the concepts, so.
We've got some good concepts. I think it'd be worth meeting with them.
Mayor and council, thank you very much. Again, this is before they got too deep into building a community plan. They wanted to float the concept and make sure that they got your feedback. So we really appreciate it. And if there's any other issues or concerns that you've got, otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any agenda review, or is council ready to move into policy session?
Mayor, if I could, we're going to table public hearing number 3. That got held up at Planning Commission. We need to table business item number 4, and we need to table business item number 10 as well. And then if I could make a suggestion, and 7 as well. Thank you. And then item number 8 really goes quite closely, business item number 8 goes very closely with public hearing number 1, if possible. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move into the policy session. This is for the City of Saratoga Springs City Council Policy Meeting on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017 at 6:51 p.m. Present tonight is Councilman Porter, Councilman Wilden, Councilman McComber, Councilwoman Barch. We have a quorum. I've asked Councilman McComber to lead us in the pledge prayer, and Councilwoman Barch to lead us in the pledge.
Our dear Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee as a community in the city of Saratoga Springs, we are truly grateful for the many blessings that Thou hast given us. We're grateful for the ability to call this place home, and we're also grateful for all of the efforts that go into making this city a place of refuge today and into the future. Today, we also would like to ask a special blessing upon the family of Councilman Bud Podeska, who recently passed away. Please bless his family, that they will find peace in knowing that he lived a wonderful life and contributed so much. And Heavenly Father, we ask that Thou will bless us this day as we make decisions, that we'll be able to look at all of the facts that affect today and into the future and make those decisions that will benefit this city. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Will the audience please rise and follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
We have public input. Loud now. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, and comments. Please be respectful in your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you're here for one of the public hearings, the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget amendments, or the Lehigh-Fairfield Road renaming, please save your comment for the public hearing portion of the meeting. Is there anybody here for public input at this time? If you would come up and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Scott Carlson, address 2264 North, 1450 East in Lehigh. I've come to address an item that you just tabled, but since I'm here, I'll share my comments anyway. Item number 7 in your business section has updates to engineering standards for development. There's quite a handful of text changes as well as changes to the details. And then there's an ordinance, and this all comes from your packet for today, an ordinance to set that into effect. My comment today is there's probably 3 comments. Timing for this to take effect and recognition of why we're doing it and who's going to carry that cost, who's going to be impacted by making changes. The one I wanted to bring up specifically was regarding the change in the local road widths. Our local road widths today are 56 feet wide right away. The discussion is for it to be raised to 59 feet. Well, sometimes you'd say, oh, well, that's just 3 feet. In a development, that adds up. As you may be aware, I'm in the middle of working on a project in the west part, on the east part of Saratoga Springs, the Pirelli Meadows project. It's 40 acres. It has 120 lots. In that, the number of feet of roads, to add 3 feet to that will take up the equivalent of 2 lots. And so it does add up. And so 2 lots less to sell, plus 5 feet more of pavement times about 6,000 feet of road is about an extra $100,000 in cost. So that project's going to cost an extra $100,000 to build, and we'll have 2 less lots to sell. Given a project that's already in play, decisions have already been made, agreements been reached with property owners for the purchase and sale and of the property. To change that at this stage in the game, after the project's already started, is a serious impact on the project. So I'd ask that you grant some length of time before that ordinance takes effect and allow projects that are currently in process to be able to continue under the current ordinance. Last, I want to dispel a common rumor. Oftentimes we hear about developments and we say, oh, no worries, that cost will just get passed on to the buyers, right? The real truth in that is that homes or lots are sold at market value, right? They don't change based on an additional road width. People don't pay more just because there's a wide road. So that cost is passed down the chain back towards the property owner, today, the current property owner, our farmers. When a purchase and sale agreement is put together, it's based on what can you do with the project. As we widen road right-of-ways, it takes away from the value received by the farmers today, because the development companies will not pay more. They'll pay less when they have increased cost and reduced yield. So let's remember when we do these changes that we want to recognize the projects already in process and remember who it is we're really affecting. If you want to make a change to that ordinance, my suggestion is leave the right-of-way width the same and take that extra space out of the wide park strips or something else, but keep it similar to what all the other cities have, keeping it at about that 56 feet wide, and just have a smaller park strip. The families will see a 6.5-foot park strip as more than most places receive. And so we could take that extra 3 feet, 1.5 and 1.5 off of each side, and it would fit just fine. And then we'd only be dealing with the extra asphalt cost. Developers in the future can deal with this as they make that purchase price in accordance with what the yield would be. And yes, the farmer will receive a little less in value for his property. But I'd encourage you to do that and delay that implementation and recognize who's actually paying that price. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else here for public input at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion of this. We'll move on to reports. First off, as Councilman McComber mentioned in his prayer today, today was the funeral services for Councilman Bud Podeska, who passed away last week. He's been a member of the council for almost 12 years, active in the city on the Urban Design Committee and City Council for well over 12 years. One of the first residents of Saratoga Springs and a friend to many in the community. In regards to Bud's seat, the council will be opening that up for applicants to fill that seat, but not until probably August, out of respect for his family and give time for things to settle down so that we can make a choice of a good replacement. Bud has been a key part of this council for a long time and will not easily be replaced with that. I don't know if any of the council has anything to add to that, or with that, in kind of remembrance of Bud's sacrifice and commitment to the city, I'd like to take a moment of silence for him and his family. If you'd please join me in that, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. Are there any other reports? Councilwoman Barch?
Mayor, I do have a couple of reports. Also, we probably need to actually make a motion to table those items officially, so if you'd like me to do that after my reports or before.
Before we start the public hearings, we'll take a motion.
Sounds good. As far as reports go, we have been in contact with, well, regularly with Mike Hansen from Utah Live Streamers. He has an Eagle Scout who is ready to do a project to install more of the split rail fencing at Shea Park. And so he's going to be working with Mark Edwards and the rest of our wonderful staff there to figure out where exactly and how that's all going to work. So that's one of the item with him. Another item, just because of the heat, they had a good turnout at their July run with the trains. It was still well attended even with the heat, but they're concerned about the heat. And so they are proposing that they're going to move both the August 12th and the September 9th run, just shift it back a couple hours. So it'll start at 8 and run until 11 instead of the 10 to 2. Hopefully get out of the heat just a little bit. Also, I wanted to find out if we had an update. This week we had or today possibly, the Utah Lake Commission Technical Committee, and I don't know if we had anybody attend that this morning or not. Wondered if we had an update on that. I know they were specifically going to talk about the algal bloom situation and find out more about that.
So with the TAC, what they've done, so I handle the governing board part, but for the TAC, they've split up the TAC into 4 different technical groups. And as part of that, they haven't really been holding their regular TAC meetings. It's been a little bit scattered as to exactly what they're doing, because they split up the 4 groups into technical scientist groups. I don't know how to describe it, but for overall, not too many cities are heavily involved because they're right now scientifically focused on like algae and stuff like that. So once they kind of get back to their regular meeting schedules, we'll have some more updates.
So we don't need to be attending that section of it, we'll just continue to attend the governing board meetings?
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on it and kind of seeing where everything's going and kind of keeping a pulse on what's happening, but as of right now, there's not a bunch of stuff going on because of those groups.
Thank you.
I think Sarah attends some of these meetings as well, and I believe the message from her was that it's going to be tomorrow for that TAC group.
The email that I got yesterday said it said tomorrow, but that was my email yesterday.
And
so that would have been today.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's going to be tomorrow, and Sarah's planning on attending.
Okay, very good, thank you. And then also, we had talked also about Talon's Cove, and I don't know if staff has followed up on that and their operating hours.
Yeah, we'd received a complaint about, well, not a complaint, but golfers want to start before 7 o'clock. Somebody had approached the city and said, hey, we're a big group of golfers, we want to get out early, we want to play, then we can go to work. But the city's not letting us play before 7 o'clock. And I've looked at every document I could find. I could not find anything that prohibits tee times before 7 o'clock. I did talk to a representative from Talon's Cove, and they start their mowers sometimes as early as 5:30.
I know. I live on the golf course.
Obviously, the way a golf course operates, you water in the evening, you mow in the morning. Obviously, they got to get mowers out ahead of the golfers. You don't want to have a conflict between the two.
What's the city's, our noise ordinance? That's why.
It says 7.
That's why.
Yeah, then the conflict.
But the golfers don't make that much noise.
But technically, the mowers have been breaking the ordinance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and staff personally has not received any complaints from anybody about the noise of the mowers.
I hear things, but I just tell them, I go, you like living on a golf course, stop complaining. But
I think it's great if they can get out at sunup and start playing.
yeah, I actually don't have a problem with them using carts because they're electric. They don't even make noise.
And I'm a golfer myself, and I played at times even before 6 o'clock. I've been the first out before. And yeah, obviously golfing's quiet. The mowers are obviously what makes the noise. But anything I could find dealing with the golf course and documents recorded at the county and our files, could not find anything that made a reference to prohibition of tee times before 7.
So does it seem like more than just a time situation for Talon's Cove where they're getting their mows out as early as they think they can without getting lynched, and then they can get the golfers on 2 hours after that? Is it more of their situation than anything having
Yeah,
to
I
do
mean,
with us?
most golf courses, they'll start out mowers before the sun's even up. They, like I said, they do have to get out ahead of them, and talk with Talon's Cove, in their words, they're losing $35,000 a year because that 1 hour block of time, so you can start at 6 o'clock most days in the summer.
They'll always say $35,000 a year.
And so they're obviously saying, hey, financially we can do much better if we can get the earlier tee times. And I haven't had time yet, but I'm going to go down and talk to Steve Watts.
I'm the one who probably
and let him know what we found or not found.
Thanks.
Perfect. There's nothing against it.
No, nothing. Can't find a prohibition against it. So, yeah.
Because they're not even breaking the noise ordinance as the golfer.
Yeah. People can go walking and jogging that early
In
in the
theory,
morning.
if someone were shouting and profaning outside of Michael's window or something like that,
But
I'm sure
even
we
then-
could go after them for a violation.
Yes, but they'd have to deal with his wife first, and that would be more dangerous.
But even then, they don't hit the decibel. Even, you'd have to have a lot of people doing that. So I say just let them tell them, so.
Perfect. Okay, Councilman McComber.
Let's just stick with a theme here. Around the golf course, Mark, I brought to your attention the Ironwood detention basins, how they were all dead. Have we gotten any follow-up on that they let all that grass, that beautiful grass, just die?
Code enforcement's on top of that.
Thanks. And they're just working to get it replaced, or?
I don't have an update on that,
Okay.
but I made them aware, and they're following up on that.
And if I could add just 2 more things. the legacy farms, I drove by, I counted just with driving by at 45, 50 miles an hour past legacy farms, 25 dead trees. Are they out of compliance on the number of trees? I think our trees doesn't say just a stick, it has to be a live tree as part of our ordinance. And I don't want them getting away with having, you know, just putting in dead trees or a tree that dies and then not replacing it or letting it sit there for years and just keep building hundreds of homes.
I'm somewhat familiar with what's going on there. They are still under their performance period, so that will be checked by their inspector. Jeremy probably is more aware of what's going on with that, but as far as I'm aware, that portion of the project has not been released into the warranty period. So the inspector is most likely working with them to get that remedy.
Because there was a certain amount of amenities and things that had to be finished before each of their phases, and they're moving into new phases without having met the requirements for their previous phase. And then also the east side of the trail is not grass. So it's just dead weed. I mean, bunch of weeds.
To clarify that there may be some of the phases that are going into warranty or phases that are. We will definitely enforce and put punch list items for ones that have active bonds that we still have leverage. We'll have to work with code enforcement if they've already exited the warranty period.
Is this sad? Because there's some of the trees are actually really big, beautiful trees that just didn't make it. They just died. The other thing is I just don't feel like this should be the council's responsibility, but I just want to also direct staff, if we could, from a compliance perspective, go back to these developments. I don't know how much we really do, but like even the townhomes at Talon's Golf Course on the south side of Fairway, they got that density because they were going to put a splash pad in that has never been turned on, ever. It's a cement pad with a fire hydrant, like a little kid fire hydrant, that has never been turned on. So how does that work in terms of, do we say it had to be an operating splash pad, or could they just put in a cement, and there's these things that we need to be looking at? So
IOW, water.
I guess I'm just getting frustrated. I am hearing a lot more, obviously, because of the nature of what I'm doing right now. I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, and I'm in the development, but I'm out talking to a lot of people right now too, and I'm hearing a lot more just in all of our neighborhoods where they got densities or they got rights to do things, and then they put it in and then they let it die, or they put it in and then in one case, and I'm going to take this one offline because I don't want to say it because I don't want to defame somebody, they actually ripped it out. And so I'll bring that offline because it's I don't want to defame a developer or something if it's not true, because I haven't had a chance to validate it. But everything that I've said, I have somebody who lives really close to this splash pad, and I've had them look for 3 weeks to see if it ever got turned on. And then I asked one of the homeowners in there, and they've never seen it turned on. So thank you.
Mark?
If I could, real quickly, tomorrow night, I believe, David Johnson will be attending an open house on trees in Legacy Farms with the developer and with the community. There's been some issues that have been raised, and so I'll have him hand off the dead tree issue as well at that point and follow up with him on that. So thank you.
And then last thing, I brought up last council about the trees along Redwood Road in front of the Saratoga Springs development, and just let you know that a lot of people are on that. There was a great meeting. We have a lot of conversation, and no trees will be ripped out until we're communicated to as a city, and we'll be given options. We can maybe do something, maybe transplant the tree if we want. We need to at least have the opportunity before they just cut down trees with trunks like this. And so I thought it was a great meeting and a lot of good conversation there between UDOT, the HOA, the city, and the landscaper and everyone. So thank you very much.
Hey, Councilman Wilden?
Just to add on that, I was able to attend that meeting with Councilman McComber and Mayor Miller. UDOT seemed very amicable and willing to negotiate and help us out as a city. So I appreciate it. Was the HOA leadership that was there, and a number of people, and the landscaper. So it was a good crew, and UDOT was open to other considerations, which is different than some of my other conversations that I've had with them in the past. So I was pleased. I'm not trying to be negative. It was a good conversation. And then I did receive some I would say messages on some of the items we're tabling, those have been, talk about them at another time.
Councilman Porter? Then one more thing, I just wanted to thank staff. I know that, Gordon, you got numbers ready for potential options for Dalmore Meadows that we'll be holding on to. We're working with UDOT actively for the residents who are curious with various options to mitigate some of their concerns with their access to Redwood Road and to the council. And so as we get updates, we'll bring that to the council. But the staff, just so you guys know, did follow through on what was asked at the last meeting. We're just holding off until we can finalize some issues with UDOT. Okay, Mark, anything from, like to introduce our new city planner?
Yes, if I could. David Stroud is here. I thought she attended the last meeting, but maybe she...
Not city council.
Planning Commission. Anyway, we're very excited. David's here, and our former planning director is also here with a couple of items she's helping to finish up. And David joins us from Orem. We're thrilled to have him, and very excited. He's been now with us for a couple of weeks, and things are going very well. And we're thrilled Kimber could also be joining us as a part-time staff member.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Okay, we will move on to a motion to table the items that have been requested tonight to be tabled.
I will make a motion that we table items, public hearing 3, business items 4, 7, and 10 until a later meeting.
I'll second that.
I have a first from Councilwoman Barch, a second from Councilman McComber. Any further discussion on the motion? Do a roll call. Councilman Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Public hearings for fiscal year 2017-2018, budget amendments, Resolution R17-71.
Mayor and Council, Shalice is traveling to Kansas in the middle of the summer, so I don't understand that one, but she has Daniel Winehouse here this evening to present her item for her. Daniel?
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Before you, we have the first budget amendment of this fiscal year. It has one item in it. It is a developer reimbursement payoff for SSD for sewer reimbursements. We did get, by paying it off all in one lump sum, there was a 20-something% discount.
20% discount.
That we were able to get to save the money. This is being paid for out of the Sewer Operations Fund, which currently has around $3 million in it. So it sits comfortably in there. Do you all have any questions for me on this budget amendment?
And it ties directly to item number 8 as well, so if you wanted to consolidate those. We do need to do a public hearing as well, but if you wanted to combine them, Daniel magnanimously just completed item number 8 for us as well, so.
Okay. Well, then we'll do the public hearing for public hearing 1. Is anybody here for public hearing? Number 1. Please be respectful in your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Not that anybody's jumping on this one. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing for fiscal year 2017-2018 budget amendments, and I will entertain a motion for public hearing item 1 and business item 8.
I move that we approve fiscal year 2018 budget amendments, Resolution R17-71 dated today, as well as the settlement agreement and release with Saratoga Springs Development LLC. Resolution R17-75, also dated today.
And do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
I have a second. So I have a first from Councilman Porter, a second from Councilman Wilden. Any further discussion on the motion?
Were there any staff findings and conditions on those? Okay, thank you.
No, just the findings in the resolution.
Yeah, that's
it.
We need to make sure we include that in the motion.
No, that's just by approving the resolution, you're approving those.
And just as a quick summary, we go from a liability of about $853,000 down to $682 by prepaying this and entering into this agreement. So it's a great deal for us as a community, and it's a great deal for the the group that's settling this with us.
Okay. That I will do a roll call. Councilman Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
I didn't get to say this, Mayor, but thank you to staff. I mean, you just saved us, what, approximately 200,000. Great work. You guys are always finding stuff like that to save everyone here in the city money, so. Not as much as that, what, 46.7 million, but it was pretty close.
Dropping the ball, Mark.
The low-hanging fruit, we already got it.
So if you can find another 46 million in addition to this, great.
Okay, we'll move on to public hearing item number 2, the Lehigh Fairfield Road renaming, Resolution R 17-72. From staff.
Gordon?
Good evening, Council and Mayor. At the Council's request, we, and a couple of work sessions, we gave notice to the residents along what's known as Lehigh Fairfield Road, and we posted notices out there that it was the city's desire to change the name of that road to Antelope Way. So that those notices have been done. The reason for that is, you know, the name of that road was appropriate back in the day when it was a connection in the county between the Lehigh area and the Fairfield area. Obviously that's changed now. And also there was some confusion with regard to emergency services and whatnot. So those notices have been mailed out, and we're in a position, if the council chooses, to make that change.
Thank you, Gordon. We will open the public hearing for the Lehigh Fairfield Road renaming. Please be respectful in your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Anybody here for the public? You'd come up to the pulpit one at a time.
My name is Fred Finlinson, and we live at 11955 West Fairfield Road, Lehigh Fairfield Road. It's kind of interesting as you look at what city governments do. Sometimes the public feel that if we could just get you to listen to the people, that would be good. Other times we're in a situation where the city is trying to tell us what to do, and the people being affected by it have not had input and don't really appreciate what you're doing for us. We've lived in Saratoga Springs on Lehigh Fairfield Road, not nearly as long as Aaron Evans, but probably longer than most of you have lived in Saratoga Springs. It's a historical name. It's a historical function that has taken place. It's the address that we've had for 15 years. And so by your action of, quote, changing our road, we're going to have a much more difficult problem than we had when you annexed us and we had a zip code change. The digits were just a few, but we got a new zip code and we hadn't moved, but now our mail was messed up. So now you're proposing to name our road Antelope Way. I submit to you that most of the antelope are down on the church's property, not on Fairfield Road. We haven't had roadkill of an antelope on Fairfield Road for a long time. And we haven't found anybody that has had difficulty when there's been an emergency of being able to come to our area. The process of changing the road requires us to go back through every contact that we've had to give them a new address. And then we say, where are you living now? Well, in the same spot. but the city's given us an opportunity to have a new road, a name for a road, and we really don't appreciate it. We submit to you and plead to you, and I think we've got everybody on the Lehigh-Fairfield Road here. I'm not aware of any of us, as we've talked, that really wants to change the name. So this time, we're urging our city government not to help us with this particular change. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Merrill. I live at 247 North 1000 West, which is one parcel north of Lehigh-Fairfield Road. My concern is my husband and I, we moved into our property in March of this year, but we've been in process of getting this home built and everything for 4 years. The land was subdivided with an agricultural subdivision a few years ago, and also the area was annexed into the city, I believe, in 2009. And at that time, 11800 West was never renamed, never relabeled as 1000 West, which is what it is known in the city. So it still has the label of 11800, and people cannot find me. I know that I have a coordinate address, but, and so when they say that emergency services can't find you on Lehigh-Fairfield Road, that's false, because I have to use 11800 West Fairfield Road for anybody to find me. And that includes UPS, FedEx, DHL, anybody who wants to come visit. So my concern is that if you rename Fairfield Road to Antelope Way, nobody's going to find me. Your GIS, from my understanding and working and finding addresses for many years, has not been updated to reflect that that is 1000 West, so we automatically get kicked out of these delivery services by their computerized systems, and they actually deliver to my home that I lived in 4 years ago in Saratoga Springs, instead of delivering to me. It doesn't even go to a person who can look up on the Utah County Assessor website and find the parcel ID and so forth, because the information is there. But the GIS systems, from my understanding, do feed into the programs that your GPS systems then pull from. My concern also is I don't see a benefit to renaming the road. When you think of city government, you think of them aiding us and benefiting us. I see some drawbacks and some negatives as far as everybody needing to go back and change all their contacts, all their banking, medical records and so forth, but I don't see any benefit to going from a name to a name. Doesn't help anybody. I also find it rather interesting that for a road that hasn't been cared about, that it's been completely torn up with potholes and ripped apart for 3.5 months, that they barely started fixing yesterday, that you're concerned about the name and you're not concerned about the condition. I also think that the City Council has a higher priority even addressing 400 North, where it's torn up just before the 800 West turn is complete washboard, and the entire road is in disrepair because of the many cuts and so forth from the developers. I believe that that would be a better area to be spending your time. And then I also have an issue with the name Antelope Way. If anybody's familiar with the area, the antelope really weren't down in the heart of Saratoga for many, many years. They've been pushed into this area by development and lack of predators. The farmers have been working with the Department of Natural Resources for many years to move the herd, because when the area became incorporated, the deprivation permits that the farmers had received became basically useless because they could no longer hunt the animals in the city limits. So the DNR has been working to move the herd, but the antelope have been bedding down. They eat the crops, they destroy the crops and so forth. They are a nuisance. I know a lot of people love to look at them. However, they are dangerous across the roads and they are damaging to the crops around. So I kind of feel like it's a derogatory name that was kind of put out there. I would just urge you to keep it as Lehigh-Fairfield Road. It maps on GPS. It's recognized by all the old timers. The other day I mentioned to an old timer, said, oh, I live just off of the old Fairfield Road. And he says, oh, I know where you are. So the idea that they can't find us, emergency and so forth, I think is false. Thank you.
I'm Mary Ellen Evans. I live at 11898 West Lehigh Fairfield Road. Now, when we first came out here over 20 years ago, we found out that it was actually Lehigh-Fairfield Road. Everybody had always referred to it as either Old Fairfield Road or Fairfield Road. It's of historic significance. If you talk to anybody in the northern end of the county at that time and you said, yeah, I live on Fairfield Road, I know where you're at. We didn't even need the number coordinates. They would know how to find us. We have never had a problem with any kind of emergency service. I would say that there are 2 roads within the city limits of Saratoga Springs that have historical significance. And Fairfield Road is probably the oldest of those roads, the other one being Redwood. Are you planning to change Redwood? I don't think so. Yes, part of the Fairfield Road has been changed and put into Pony Express. And I'm not even sure if Pony Express Trail predates Fairfield Road. If you're not familiar with any Utah history, at the time that Johnston's army was encamped out at Fairfield, they established this road to get to Fairfield. The pioneers even started construction of a well out on what you call Unity Pass. Their whole purpose was to observe Johnston's army. It wasn't really to dig a well and find water. I would suggest that maybe our public officials need to familiarize themselves with the local history before they randomly start pulling names out of hats to rechange our road. Now, if you were changing us to coordinates, that might be different, but we can't be 200 north. We're probably 200 north on one end and 100 north on the other end, so you're changing from a name to a name, which makes no sense whatsoever. Everybody wants to move in here. They've changed our wards, they've changed our stakes, they've forced us into a city we didn't want to belong to, and now you want to insult us by changing the name of our road as well. I don't get it. If you don't want to have Lehigh in the name, if you think that's confusing, we've never found anybody. I'm not objective to have, hey, call it Old Fairfield Road or Fairfield Road. But that's what it has historically been known of, and it's part of the history of this area. So everyone always wants to move in, you know, and change everything. We've had everything changed. And actually, we're 6 generations on this property. So I think we kind of know what we're talking about. I would appreciate it very much if you would consider leaving it Fairfield Road. In other parts of the nation, they don't even go on the coordinate grids like we have here in Utah. It's unheard of. They have a name of a road and they have consecutive numbering. So even the numbering isn't that big of a deal. But if you insist on changing the numbering, at least leave the name Fairfield and not put us all through the misery and torment of having to change multitudes of business documents. Yes, we do business at that address. It's not just a phone. You said you will notify Questar of a change of address. Well, you know what? None of us have Questar. It doesn't come up that road. So anyway, thank you very much.
Darrell Wendell, 11698 West Lehigh Fairfield Road. Concerning the change of the road, I thought that maybe before deciding on the change that the individuals affected would be notified and have them get together and decide what they would like as far as a change of a road name. And I'm not sure about the addresses, if that's highly necessary or not, the numerical addresses. But that was my opinion, that we should have been notified and got together and all of us come to a decision and then submitted it back to you, and I think people would have been happier. But my other comment was, you can drop the Lehigh if you want to change the road. I do like the Fairfield Road, and like the Evanses, I have a lot of business I do, and I'd have to change everything, and really a big inconvenience, but I realize that the city's progressing, but not arguing there, and that's my comments.
Holy, 11735, West Lehigh Fairfield Road, 9619, excuse me. May I ask how Antelope Way was chosen? I mean, you just pulled it out of the air? Does it map with other things in the city? Is it being changed for the Mount Saratoga development that's occurring just to the west of us? I would say, happen to be in city council meeting a couple of weeks ago when you mentioned Antelope Way and a different name, Skunk Hollow, or I thought I heard some other alternative that you might have come up with. Again, you know, it would have been nice to at least have had some understanding of why you were changing it. I mean, Fairfield Road is Fairfield Road. If the intent is to bring all the historical elements out of Saratoga Springs and deed them all to Eagle Mountain, you're doing a good job of it. I would prefer not having to go through the hassle of changing my address. I do have to say, however, that 968 West Antelope Way does have a cachet to it, you know, that might be able to promote in the future. I might anticipate, or I might point out that 968 West Fairfield Road also has that same cachet, and it will help the fire department, police department get to my place, which is all we're looking for. I would urge you to reconsider changing Fairfield Road to Antelope Way. Thank you.
My name is Aaron Evans. I live at 11898 West Lehigh Fairfield Road. In talking with numerous members of your staff, no one seems to take the responsibility for the name change. They say, oh, the council did it. Who on the council did it? I talked with Councilman Porter. He didn't know. I've tried several other calls. I haven't got a response. I talked with Brian, what's his name? Lagos, that sent the letter out. He didn't know. Maybe you can answer the question. Who decided to change the name and why? I didn't realize that Saratoga Springs or this council hated your two neighboring cities. That you're so offended to have Lehigh and Fairfield names within your city. I'd be ashamed to take and even consider the fact that you don't even like your cities adjacent to you. I think it's a shame that you can't take and do other things than to rename a road that is so historical. I remember one of my conversations with the mayor who said, I used to go hunting rabbits out on that road. You talk to anybody that's lived around here at all, everybody knows where the Lehigh Fairfield Road is. Everybody. Now, that doesn't include you guys because you're all new. And that's the biggest problem with this city. When you bring a problem to the city, to the council, to the staff, I'm new. I don't know. Your problem is you're new. Those of us that are here and have been here are not totally appreciative of all the changes. It's like I've told a lot of people, I love y'all, but damn it, go home. It would be great if I could have it back the way I had. I've only lived out here all my life. That's 74 years. I haven't lived here very long. But I'll tell you what, I got a lot more history and a lot more value of where I come from than apparently you do. So I would appreciate you leaving the name alone. Contractors are all the time looking for names for roads. Give them Antelope Way. We don't need it. So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the fact that you would leave the name alone. Thank you.
So I'm Henry Barlow, and I do not live on the Lehigh-Fairfield Road. However, I have been out here for 18 years. And what's in a name? I was out here when it was Lehigh, and now I'm a part of wonderful Radiator Springs. That's going to be in 2 weeks when we propose that name change. And of course, that would be offensive to the city. So it's not Radiator Springs. It's Saratoga Springs. Let's leave it Lehigh-Fairfield Road. That means something to a lot of us, certainly the people that live on the Lehigh-Fairfield Road. They have a valid point and a valid cause. And when you weigh in the balance to change or to not change, why in the world would you see more on the side of changing that? When you look at throwing away the history, and even if it was nothing else than the people that live on that road, they bring a valid point without any other single thing. And so when you weigh in the balance to change or to not change, it would be impossible to stack on this side the advantages to change. So these folks have said it really well, and it's from their heart, and I'm here to support them and back it up. And having been here before Saratoga was annexing that area, I live right there in that area. I'm for leaving the name the same as well. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment at this point? Okay, I will close the public hearing on the name change. There was a couple questions by Mr. Evans, just to kind of quickly address. If your group needs somebody to blame, you can blame me, because that's better than throwing the blame around. It's nothing against the neighboring cities. I was born and raised in Lehigh. My ancestors, the Carsons, established the Fairfield Hotel out there by the Army. This is a big part of my family's history, my family's life. Part of this whole thing was to get a discussion going on cleaning up names. We've had to change lots of road names within the city for various reasons. We've had resident involvement in those through this very process that you're hearing tonight. As a council, I'll speak on behalf of the entire council. We appreciate your input and your feedback through the public hearing process that we've gone through tonight. And I will let the council talk in regards to this item on that. Councilwoman Barch.
So as far as the changing goes, I'm not aware of the exact content of the letters that went out. So are we talking about changing also their actual addressing? Is that because they're going from county numbers to city numbers, city coordinates?
I'm not sure about whether it's county to city, but as I discussed this with Brian, as I discussed this with Brian, he noted that we should take the opportunity to clean up some inaccuracies in the numbering on some of them.
As long as I know, that's okay. That's fine, you're fine.
One more comment, if I could. Not even listed on. Got the letter somehow.
Something for staff to look at. Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. We've had that, happen a couple of different places in the city, especially as areas have been annexed in. We'll have that happen, I assume, out in the Pirelli Meadows area with all of those annexations, as well as we look at the addressing.
For example, the naming of the street, the one resident mentioned about the number, Brian mentioned that to me too, that it was an opportunity to fix that.
That's one of the ones I was going to bring up that Ms. Merrill brought up with the 118 West to 1000 West.
Yes.
I know we had that actually further north as well, I believe, with probably the Paskets and the, I totally blanked, my neighbors. Anyway, they had that situation also where they were on, I believe, 118,000 West.
I'm
I don't know if they still are.
I'm looking at the parcel map, it looks like it's pretty inconsistent there. Like, for instance, Mr. Evans' property is under our coordinate system. And then just across the street, the Finlansons are still on the old county
system.
coordinate system. So it's interesting.
Oh.
I don't know, that's the county records. I don't know what the postal service or post office uses.
So obviously that's how we got to this area, is looking at cleaning up certain situations like this. As far as the naming goes, we're looking for something that there have been confusions. You may not have had personal problems, but there have been other people that have had problems with it. I don't mind Old Fairfield Road. If we wanted to stay a little bit more historical, that would be fine. I think that however we want to do that, that's fine, as long as we can get the address in itself cleaned up just for. That's it.
So as Councilwoman Barr said, this isn't just, we're targeting Lehigh Fairfield Road. We've had Panorama, we've had a lot of different roads in the city that we've had to clean up, and we had various developments with just different staff changes where we had even duplicate names that we had to fix. And so this was just on the list as one of the ones to fix. I personally think that Old Fairfield Road, I like historical roads. The fact that Fairfield is on the other side of Eagle Mountain, I think helps too, because the reason why, it's not that we don't like our neighbors, and I didn't really appreciate some of the negativity. You could have done it a lot better. Usually honey attracts more than what you guys put forward. So I'm just gonna lay that out there. Lehigh didn't have a problem getting rid of old Saratoga Road. They just got rid of it. Doesn't exist in Lehigh. Saratoga Road is 2300 West. 2300 West is old Saratoga Road. So you're going to go to the Lehigh City Council and tell them that they hate their neighbors and that they are horrible and they're taking the history of Lehigh and throwing it down? So I just didn't really appreciate some of that. So, but I did appreciate many of you who came and were sincere in your comments and definitely brought forward your thoughts and your concerns. From a historical perspective, I think Old Fairfield Road makes sense. I think that Saratoga Springs absolutely does honor and cherish the limited history that we have because we have a pump station that we've definitely taken a lot of pride in. Even the park, even our own float has the slide from the Saratoga Springs Amusement Park that was out here. So I think that the history of Saratoga Springs isn't lost with these new people that are coming out. Also, I think that it's important to understand that Saratoga Springs, that some of these old timers that you say made millions and millions of dollars selling their land to these developers, and many of you in the room made money off of it as well. So I just think that should go on the record. So if you didn't want people to come, you probably shouldn't have sold your land to developers. And so I think that Old Fairfield Road makes sense, and I would be willing to support that. And that's all I have.
I'm grateful that we have this on a public hearing item because it means we're successful. I mean, if someone changed my name, the name of my road, I'd be like, that's kind of annoying, but it wouldn't really bother me that much. But that's me personally, but that's why these are public hearings, and this is the process. And I appreciate everyone that came out, and it worked, other than someone who didn't get one of the letters. So we need to make sure we get that fixed. The reason why I was entertaining a notion of changing it is because I trust our emergency service providers. Those are who I rely on. They're hired professional staff that has lots of certification, many years of experience that says there has been some confusion here. But I'm certainly not married to Antelope Way. I don't see them that often anyway. But I certainly would be open to Old Fairfield Road to maintain some of the history and the desires of the residents, but my suggestion is before we even do that, is maybe staff reach out and have a meeting with the neighbors, put some parameters around it to see if they're amenable to Old Fairfield or if they'd want something else. I do think I'm fine with Lehigh. I have families lived in Lehigh, but I think that's part of it. It's caused the confusion. So I would be okay with tabling this and allowing the residents to give some input on this, and you know, as long as we put some parameters around it. But again, like I said, I'm fine with Old Fairfield Way. And then I'm not an expert on changing the numbering on that, but I don't know that we really need to change the numbers, but that's me shooting from the hip. Okay, but that, you know, if part of that feedback is maybe explaining to the residents why, working through that issues with them. So.
Hey, Councilman Porter.
I would agree with a lot of what Councilman Wilden said. This is the process that's set up so that we can get feedback, and so I think it worked. We've gotten our feedback, and it's pretty obvious that you guys aren't interested in changing the name of your road. I do think, as far as the numbering, it makes sense to me why it needs to be changed. I know it's inconvenient. I know it's horrible. They changed my address 3 times before I moved into my house, so I had to change my address 3 times before I even lived there. So I can understand the no fun of having to change that address, but I think it's going to become more of an issue as the city develops to the west. As far as the name, I'm kind of in a funny situation. We've got people here living on a road that don't want their name changed. I live on a road where everybody wants the name changed, and I can't get anywhere on that either, so I feel your pain a little bit. So anyway, I'm kind of in line with Councilman Wilden. I would like to see, you know, get some input as far as what's acceptable to the residents. I think Old Fairfield Road, to me, is, you know, kind of meets all of the desires, but I don't want to speak for you because you know, obviously you guys feel very strongly about this, and so I'd be supportive of having a sit down and see if we can come to something. I think we have had some confusion with the Lehigh being in there. As far as what city, you know, our firefighters know where it's at, but maybe Lehigh's firefighters don't, or Bluffdale, or whoever's Unified Fire. So we have to make sure that we're taking care of that, and not only for the residents that live there now, but the residents that will be there in the future as things happen. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Just kind of curiosity, it seems like from what you guys said, Mr. Finlinson, I'm going to pick on you. Most of your neighbors are here tonight, are they not?
At 100%.
What was that?
At 100%.
So, I mean, I support the idea of going back out, but if they're all here, and, I mean, the council's kind of said they're in favor of Old Fairfield Road. Quite a few of you mentioned Old Fairfield Road as a potential name.
It's a lot better than Antelope Way.
So, I mean, if there's not an objection, are you with your group? A show of hands?
Sure, you could do that. I can live with that. And,
what's wrong with just leaving it the way it is?
It's already been explained.
We've kind of gone over that. Old Fairfield Road, as was mentioned by a lot of the residents tonight, that they would like that or be okay with that. Okay.
So, Mayor, Council, I've just been kind of going through this process, working with our dispatch center to make sure that we're not potentially creating an issue. The answer the residents need to know is that there are in northern Utah County, I know of 3 different roads that have Lehigh in them. There's Lehigh Farm, Lehigh Ranch, and Lehigh Fairfield. There are some issues with leaving Lehigh in the name. Again, this is for what is to come. I'm also double checking because when the dispatch center updated their computer-aided dispatch computer system not too long ago, many of the old county coordinate addresses do not validate. And so what happens is it ends up adding a tremendous amount of time to a dispatch to somebody's address that does not validate. I'm finding out right now, just put a message into the new supervisor of the dispatch facility, and he'll let me know tomorrow which addresses have issue validating. And so what happens is they have to rely on cell phone pings and GPS locations, and it adds a tremendous amount of time to being able to get people the help that they need in a timely manner. So,
thank you, Chief. As we're starting, kind of show of hands for Old Fairfield Road from the neighbors. You're okay with that as the new name? Looks like we have a majority of them. Thank you, Mr. Finlandson, for letting me pick on you.
Just an interesting comment. The process of inviting us to participate we appreciate. It's like I indicated at the beginning, that sometimes you try to get city government to act, and then other times you try to get them to say, whoa. And the only negative of calling it the old Lehigh Fairfield Road, or Lehigh Fairfield Road, is that probably most of us on that road are old. Thank you very much for your
And just a point of...
At some point, we'll all be joining.
We are going to be labeling Saratoga Road back, just as part of this process. We've actually had conversations that on our part of the city, that Old Saratoga Road will get named back to that because it is historical, and we should not lose that because of many of you and your children came out here and played at that park. And so it's something that we are trying to restore as well.
Mayor?
Mark?
So and I apologize, as we were kind of talking about this, do you want as a group to drop the old and just call it Fairfield Road? Yes. Can we see a show of hands on that, just because I heard that comment out there?
Okay. That works too.
Okay, and then there's no gender discrimination going on there for you, Fred. Age discrimination, sorry. Age discrimination.
How about Bright and Young Fairfield Road?
While we're at this, can we amend this to change the name of Meyer Street?
Yep, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we pass resolution R17-72 dated today, renaming Lehigh Fairfield Road to Fairfield Road and updating addresses as necessary per the GIS.
I have a first from Councilwoman Barch.
Second.
And I have a second from Councilman Wilden. Any further discussion on the motion?
I don't know.
Oh, I didn't see. Yes, before we...
Earl Wendell again. So are we going to consider changing the address numbers then?
Yeah, I included that in my motion.
Okay, just wondering.
Thank you. Okay, I have a first from Councilwoman Barch, a second from Councilman Wilden. No further discussion. We'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Barch.
Aye.
McComber.
Aye.
Wilden.
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you to those who attended tonight to help us with this process. Yes.
You don't have to ask, you can just leave.
You guys are okay to stay Radiator Springs then?
I like Radiator Springs.
Contrary to Councilman Over,
Okay.
the land was not stolen.
Okay, we will move on to the business items in the general plan update, ordinance 17-13, continued from our 6:20 meeting.
Mayor and Council, it's good to see you tonight. Most of the presentation it's going to be a fairly short presentation. The general plan has been before the Planning Commission 4 or 5 times, and before the council a couple times. There was a massive public outreach process that was done. At the last public hearing, at the last council meeting, the council held a public hearing, reviewed the general plan proposal, including the land use map, and continued it to this date with a few changes. And so the consultants are here to go over those changes, and it is in your packet for possible approval tonight. Thank you. I'll turn it over to the consultants.
Hi, Chrissy Gilmore, Bountiful, Utah. So I don't know if we need to see it up there. Can you guys see it? Or okay.
The mayor had Netflix open earlier.
And so okay. Here we go. Okay, so I just hurrying through a couple of slides on here to go through the changes that were made. There were several just text edits and general, stuff that wasn't put up here, but these are the major ones. So on the future land use map, the land use categories for industrial and office were split apart, and then they go in level of intensity. So office, warehouse, light industrial, and then general industrial. The medium density residential category was updated. You should see in the draft the blue language is the new text and the red is what was taken out, but basically to remove detached dwellings and then switch the dwelling units per acre from 14 to 8. And then the community commercial land use category removed residential uses, and the waterfront overlay was added to the future land use map. And you should see an updated land use map in front of you where you can actually see it. And then I just threw the land use map on the screen, so in case you had any questions, it was up for you to review. But other than that, the maps in the document, the whole document were changed to alter road names. I actually ended up removing a lot of the road names only because it was easier to see what was underneath. Because once you made them too little, it was pointless to have it on there anyway. So I'm open for any questions. Thank you for letting me come and talk to you today.
Well, shoot, I wasn't ready. No. I mean, my big concern last time, I believe, was that labeling things industrial type right next to Aspen Hill, other areas. From what I can tell, I was trying to pick it up, but what I can tell is, reading the packet, I know some of the other council members had some concerns last time. As long as my big concern's addressed and the other council members' concerns, comfortable with it at this point, although I am tempted to table it just to make Kimber keep coming back again and again.
So she's no longer exempt, so I would, from a budgetary standpoint, not suggest that we continue to do that. From a fiscal sustainability standpoint.
It's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it.
Instead, you just bribe her with food.
I don't have anything. Oh, sorry. Cough drops. No, that's all I had.
So it's not, oh, there it goes. It just came in. So I was looking at it, and for me, the only thing that I guess I was a little bit confused by is the transit corridor. You drew on another little line that takes what would be Pony Express, that it's the Vineyard, part of the Vineyard connection, and you pop it all the way up to Pioneer Crossing instead of connecting it at Pony Express. And I was just wondering why that's the case.
Yep, so I do need to move it down going, I'm not sure actually what this road's called.
To Pony Express?
Yeah, could connect. But BRT lines, which that one would be, typically do have similar uses to TRAX lines.
Yeah, just the one that was drawn on just didn't connect where I thought it would.
So the northern line, the one that goes along Pioneer, is where the BRT will go, but they won't be able to put tracks across there because they can't expand it. So they can do, the tracks will go lower down and connect onto the Pony, what will become the Pony area.
Yeah, I'm talking about.
Can I point?
No, this big red line, they brought it up to Pioneer Crossing instead of connecting it to Pony Express.
Oh, it does go that way, on all of the maps.
Yeah, on all the maps, it goes north instead of south. I mean, that doesn't mean it couldn't change.
On all of the mag.
So the road, the Vineyard Connector Road, that basically connects out to the Vineyard Connector. It's the Pony Express that goes through past Loch Lomond. That connects up to Pioneer Crossing?
Just the train line would move up. Eventually, there would probably be another southern line, but the first route shows it coming along in the south of the city here, and then kind
Okay,
of
so
up.
that what would help me is the grid lines, those like diagonal blue lines, they don't continue down and across over that red.
Yes, so that was the note in your packet that overlay needed to continue along the southern transit line. So that's one change that would need to be made.
Okay.
It wasn't made in the this final version, so we called it out in the staff report.
So
Approved final version.
So
One
we'll be
condition.
approving it knowing that that's
Subject
coming?
to that one change, yes.
Okay.
And any other changes that the council has tonight.
And then the commercial floating overlay, I don't see that anywhere in the city, so why do we have it in the table?
So you should see it.
Is that stuff down south?
Yeah,
That all over all those homes?
And it's
all
not
over?
intended to say that that whole area will be commercial, but just that in the future, you guys have the discretion, since you don't know where the exact alignments of the Mountain View corridor will go.
Yeah, so that is subject to some criteria. It allows the flexibility for when Foothill Boulevard goes in, where there is an appropriate intersection or access point, that you can put commercial there. But without knowing the final alignment, this floating overlay allows you to choose that when the locations are identified. It doesn't mean it will go over the homes or immediately, even immediately adjacent to the homes. There will be criteria for it.
I'm sorry, and I actually commented on the wrong one. I remember that was the floating overlay over Jacobs Ranch. It's the future transit-oriented development. I didn't see those grid lines anywhere in the city.
That's the blue hatch. That's the blue along Pony and along Pioneer Crossing.
But I see that as, okay, and then the waterfront overlay is along the lake
And the river, yes.
and the river, and that's not on the one online, that was just in this one here.
Yes, that was the one that was missing.
Okay, and then,
There's mud.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just wanted to make sure, because obviously, I sort of joked about at the beginning, these kinds of maps, people use these against us, right?
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that that's not a bad thing or a good thing, that's just the reality. So I just want to make sure that we're approving as accurate as possible, even though we did potentially change the zone already. We already made this map outdated with the conversation that we had earlier today with the Tim subdivision in his,
We can make that change.
I'm just.
It's a living document.
Technically, we haven't approved it yet, but we basically pretty much told the guy that we liked his plan. So I don't know. It just shows you that these things are living documents. So for me, I do really appreciate all of the efforts that went into it. I appreciate the change of the with the names and the street names, and I actually liked how you just took the names out, because that takes a lot of the confusion away. And then my last comment is the future transit-oriented development, you didn't feel it necessary to do that for the Mountain View corridor. I don't.
So I just based those lines off of BRT and tracks. And so BRT and tracks aren't planned for the Mountain View corridor that I know of, and I might be wrong.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. So just in response to Councilman McComber's comment just a moment ago, that's actually one of the things that we've been kind of talking about, and I know that our staff and our mayor have been in conversations with other western mayors, we'll say, to see if we can bring some of that transit through on the west
I
side.
would love to see tracks connect up.
It makes sense.
Talking to the mayor of South Jordan as
Right.
well.
It makes sense. So that's something that we're working on. We just haven't even gotten anywhere close to that as far as MAG
it's not really ready to be
MAG and
put on
Wasatch
here
Front
yet.
Council is concerned.
As part of the Point of the Mountain discussions with the prison site being relocated, they're looking at a lot of those options, transit, west side, et cetera, not just at the prison site, but how does it all tie together? So just filling in that there is some of that discussion. I attended a meeting earlier this week that we talked about that.
So it's just a little premature maybe to put it on here, but maybe in the coming years. Okay, thank you for
Well,
the
I think we would probably make simple changes to this a lot more easily than having to go through a whole consultation process, so it'll be better. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
For the clarification.
Yeah. So I just have 4 quick comments. If we can't, I don't know if it's appropriate, I think we can probably go ahead and change the Tim subdivision areas, because this is a plan anyway, so we might as well change that. And then on, it's listed as page 22 out of 62 in the little numbers in our packet. And it talks about the high density, and it says that it starts at 5 units to the acre, which is not high density. So you fix the low density areas for 1 and up, for the really low, and et cetera, but we need to make that more to the correct number, which I think should start at 8 or 10 according to our
It should
code.
be
10, I think, maybe, because I think 8 is technically,
9 to 18.
okay, so anyway, however that is, make sure that it coordinates with our code. And then also, besides the TOD that was mentioned earlier, also on 36 out of 62, when you're looking at the roadways, and I realize that it hasn't been updated on all of Mountain View Corridor and everything else on all of MAG stuff, but where Mountain View Corridor splits to go out through Hidden Valley and then continue to the south, although they haven't updated, we already know that that split out through Hidden Valley cannot be a freeway. So it at least needs to come down to the same level as the southern route. And I realize that there's a note that, it's all conceptual anyway, but we know it's not going to be a freeway, so there's no reason to mark it as such. So those are the only changes that I think that we need to make sure we make.
So we've discussed having that be some sort of a principal arterial or a major arterial. Would one of those be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've heard that the most they could do with the grades, possibly like Redwood.
Redwood, okay, and
is
Redwood.
what I've heard in
Principal
discussions.
arterial, okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate the update to the map. I know one of my concerns was the reallocation. Last time you kind of showed that you had a certain number of acres. Did you try and stick to those numbers and just kind of move them around where they were located?
Yeah, we
Okay.
did, and the industrial did go down a little bit, but the office went up.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think the changes to clarify the difference between high, low, and medium density is very important. So I think you've hit on everything, or the council's already hit on everything that I had concerns with. So looks good.
One more thing, page 36, which
Okay. 6 is the transportation framework map.
Yeah, I can't tell, but we've had problems caused because of discrepancies in maps. Or I just want to make sure it's clear on the map that the Aspen Hills Boulevard. I don't want it just to appear anywhere as if we have a whole nother. Yes. I can't tell. But.
Well, honestly, I'm wondering if that little extension of 800 even needs to be shown on there, depending on what they're doing
Depending
with
on what
that,
the end
so,
result is,
yeah.
it kind of keeps shifting.
And this is
so
all
I can
conceptual,
check,
but I
yeah.
agree.
Okay.
We've learned that just conceptual maps.
And we do, of course, have the note that says future roadway alignments are conceptual and not exact because it's a moving target. So there will be a north-south. Do we need to put the 2-finger note on there?
I'll entertain a motion.
I will move that we approve the general plan update ordinance 17-13 dated today, including all of the changes made in our comments today.
Can I list those for, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sure, go for
You
it.
can list them.
Go for it.
Correcting the TOD overlay to the east, updating the Timms property as proposed tonight, changing high density to from 5 to 18, correcting it to 9 to 18, changing Hidden Valley to a principal arterial, and making sure that there's no implied connection to Aspen Hills.
I believe there was, I thought you had one more. Yeah. Okay. Yep. I think that's all of them. Thank you very much. Including
I'll
all-
second that motion with
including all
those
staff findings and
details.
conditions.
Yeah.
Barge, second, council. Discussion on the motion. Go roll call, Councilwoman Barge.
Aye.
Aye.
Wilden.
Aye.
Aye.
Big project done. Check. Woo!
Thank
You'll have
you.
to come back, though.
Just to give you guys a little, so now I'll go through and we'll do the final copy edit to catch any typos, and then we also add the links so that you can click on the page numbers and.
Oh, the
link to it.
hyperlinking of it, yeah.
Yep, so we'll have a few other edits that shouldn't affect your motion, but just the final cleanup.
Well, that's great, thank you.
So I'd like to congratulate David for getting this done in his department. Well done, David.
Got some great employees there.
Hey,
say it really.
Mark, last time we talked about like giving a recognition to the advisory committee or something like that.
Sending
you
a
know?
letter.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, yeah, if we could do that.
There's a lot of work from the residents on that. Yeah.
Item 2, water tank and pump. Permit. Holmes is the applicant. And a long time.
Can you pull up the PowerPoint? What's that?
Still the quorum.
Just at the top. Yeah. Okay, this is in the Mount Saratoga development, generally at the top of Chalice Ridge Boulevard and the mountain just to the south of that. This is the general location. So this map has it identified a little bit more clearly. So those two little circles in the middle are one of those is a tank, one is a future tank. Yeah, and then kind of at the top of the existing portion of Talus Ridge Boulevard is where the pump house will go. This is the tank site, and these lines all indicate cross sections for the particular tank. There is a review of the slope blending that's required by the community plan, and so there's some cross sections in here of those slopes, and the community plan does require that they blend into existing grade, and so that's a recommendation that they meet that requirement. So the red line is what staff is suggesting to meet that requirement. And then here is the pump house site and the grading for that, and then the landscape plan, which would just be rock, native landscaping, and then trees and shrubs. The wrought iron style aluminum fence is proposed around both locations with a security top. And then there's conditions in the staff report that are suggested with this approval, and number 6 was added by the Planning Commission.
Sorry, let me pull this open. Go back to one of the first diagrams. Is this road, is this like an access road?
That's correct.
Yeah, trail, or is it what?
It's an access road.
Okay, is it just gonna be dirt then? Or is it paved?
I don't know. Sorry, I'd have to look more closely at the notes.
It's paved.
It is paved, okay.
The ones to our other sites aren't, so I don't, it is
Okay.
paved. Can you see the note?
And I know that a lot of people like to go hiking up here now, without there being a tank up there, and so I'm just, I'm wondering if they're gonna be able to still do that, and whether they can use the road or, so.
Oh, okay, it will eventually be paved, but it will not start off being paved. That's what the applicant
Okay.
just said.
I'm just curious more than anything, so. Yeah, I think, looks like, I don't have any issues with it, so. Looks good.
The question I had was actually on the pump house site plan.
Okay. Let me go
Just
to that.
wondering, so a lot of the materials are called out, but the majority of the area, the cross-hatched area, isn't called out as to what that surface is. So the big main central area is not, the majority of it's not actually called out. So I can see where it's native seed, I can see where the trees are at, things like, I can see where the concrete is at in one of the other exhibits, but the actual surface area for the majority is not actually called out.
That's landscape rock, isn't it? I believe that's rock. Gravel.
That's, well, it's not pretty, but I couldn't comprehend that they were actually going to concrete the whole entire surface, and it didn't make any sense.
Oh, it's gravel.
Okay. So I see the retaining walls in there. How and when are the park strips going to be taken care of on this?
They will be building that section of Talus Ridge Boulevard with, so let me go to, this plan helps. So that section of Talus Ridge Boulevard will be built with the adjacent phase, and the park strips will be taken care of at that time, and then they'll be maintained by the HOA.
Those are the only questions I had.
So I just had a quick question on the tank itself, and the berming up on the side. So looks like a little more than half the tank is buried. Is that like a code, how much tank has to be above ground?
No, it's not a code. It's in the community plan that cuts in the hillside have to blend back into the native hillside, and that's the reason for the comment. It does create a larger disturbance area to do that.
But I want that. I want it to be buried. I mean, Lehigh actually was a good neighbor, and when they put their tank in, they buried it as much as they could, and they're doing the best they can to, even though it costs more, it caused more of a disruption, long-term it's the right thing to do in terms of hiding it, because the disrupted soil can be reseeded and different things. It might take time to get it back, but I would like to see as much of this as down in the ground as possible, so that visibly it's not noticeable as much as possible from down below. I don't know if it's going to
Right, so there is a purpose for the particular elevation and it being halfway in and halfway out, and because of that, they will need to modify the grade to blend that back in. That's an engineering thing that has to do, the particular elevation is an engineering factor.
They couldn't sink it further.
Lehigh couldn't.
Right, that's the elevation issue, matching with other tanks. And by the way, that burying the tank, that's good from many standpoints. The longevity of the tank, it's going to last longer if it's buried.
As long as we're, from an engineering perspective, we're getting it buried as much as possible for feasibility. If there's a water bubble, the little toilet thing inside that tells you how high the water is and all that. I just want it in the ground as much as possible because I think it helps that whole development. It helps the visuals from the valley looking up. So whatever we can do to work with the applicant to get it in the ground as much as possible. That's my only concern, but if that's all we can get, that's all we can get. So thank you.
Right, they can't go lower because of the required elevation, but they can blend it more than they have done on their plans.
So blend it more then. you're going to be moving a lot of dirt around in this development over the next few years. You have plenty of dirt that you can take. You can get up there. But if you could blend it more, that'd be great. Just, I think it makes it more of a, to your point, the walking, people used to walk up there, it'll make it more appealing as they go up there still. And well, thank you, appreciate it.
This will be a good thing for the city, help with our infrastructure.
Absolutely,
And I'm glad it's coming, and I'm gonna make fun of myself a little bit on, I was talking earlier saying, when you put concepts in there, you expect them to be there, so on Exhibit 7, when I go on a hike, I expect a bathroom top of the hill.
Oh, your exhibit is a bathroom, that's funny. I didn't notice that.
That's not a serious comment. I did ask Councilman Porter why they putting a bathroom up there, and he told me it was just, so.
That's
making fun of myself. But no, this will be a great thing for the city, and I don't have any more comments. So.
Okay. Councilwoman Jordan, here? Question then?
Yeah, sorry. Just on the native seed, and this is something for staff maybe to kind of look into. As we were coming out of Bluffdale today, they have their big water tank that's right there. And they have a very different native seed mix than we use, and it actually looks like flowers and not weeds. So it's something we might want to look into. I realize that they are also watering their tank, and they have sod across the top of it, which I think is a little extreme. However, one of the things that grows really, really well around here without additional water is some of the native little tiny roses that we, for some reason, keep cutting down along Canal Trail every year, and of course they come back instead of letting them flourish and take over so we don't have some of the other issues. So I think if we can just look at what we're using as our native mix and maybe improve the ambiance of it while still allowing for the water conservation, that would be phenomenal.
Jeremy, if you do that.
I'll address that comment, then I had another thing. So we do have two seed mixes. One that does include flowers, and then one is a grass only, and typically use the grass only when it's a mowable. But we could use the one with flowers. I'm not sure this is going to be a mobile area, so that would make it more appropriate to use a...
I just think about what's happened at Shea on the berm and the fact that we've had to go in and reseed it again, and I realize that's partially because the kids use it for mountain biking, et cetera. But nonetheless, if we had something that looked nicer, people would want to take better care of it versus something that they see as just weeds. So who cares if we run our bikes over it?
I think type 1 includes flowers and type 2 is grasses only. Either one requires temporary irrigation to establish the native.
Right.
And then it's intended to be non-watered once it's established. I wanted to bring up a concern. I was talking to Brandon from Edge Homes. Not having it paved would make it very difficult to access in the winter. We don't have the equipment to, I think this is a half-mile access road off, so you go from a public road, I think, whether that's on Saratoga Parkway, it's a half-mile up the hill to get to the tank, and if it wasn't paved in the winter, it would be nearly impossible to access. Brandon's concern is that they have a future water line proposed under that trail. So he's like, okay, we could pave it, but then we're ripping it up, so I don't know what the answer is. I'm just voicing a concern from a maintenance standpoint that time frame between.
Brandon, just put your water line in now. Come on.
I could let Brandon answer that. I mean, that's a valid concern he has, but I also have a valid concern I feel. So.
I get that. I never.
Do we need the snowmobile for Saratoga?
Snowmobile.
Snowcat.
Please don't suggest that. No, staff, you may not buy a snowcat.
Need a boat as well for the new marina in the lake.
I bet you it shows up on our next agenda.
Our own land tamer for the marina.
Everything, then I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve Mount Saratoga water tank and pump house site plan and conditional use permit, Edge Homes applicant, 1300 West, Taos Ridge Road, and the rest of the address.
Second.
We have a first from Councilman Wilden, a second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion on the motion?
Do we need to direct staff to work out the whole paved or not paved on the trail? How do we want to handle that? Is that something that you want direction from us to have them pave it because of access?
He's nodding back there, so.
Who's nodding? Brandon's nodding?
Jeremy.
If you were going to make a not too specific recommendation, maybe something that a paved a hardened surface acceptable to Public Works or something like that, and then we could work with the applicant to try to find a compromise.
Gordon's raising his hand now.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I thought the engineering drawings showed the trail going up there, showed it being paved, so.
I thought it did too. That's why I was surprised when I heard it was not.
I thought it
I understand the water line issues. It's just.
I think we're just discussing timing.
Right. I was just responding to the applicant's
Brandon,
comment
you
that
have a
it wasn't
month to
gonna be
get your
paved
water
at
line in.
first, so.
That's not a problem, right? Yeah, we're in our discussion right now.
Further discussion.
Because otherwise it'd be longest motion.
So Brandon Watson with Edge Homes. If it's in the engineering drawings, then we'll put in the paved road. I think our concern is simply when that secondary water line does go in and when that future secondary tank goes in, that whole road's going to be obliterated and destroyed.
Does it literally follow
Yeah.
follow that access road?
Yeah, it does.
He just smiled.
I commented that.
Those on the camera, you can't see the huge smile on his face right now. Yeah, in 30 seconds from now.
I think that Jeremy has a pretty valid point as far as access goes. We're going to need to get to that this winter, even as it's in use possibly. Hopefully we won't, but you never.
I'm fine adding a condition.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I am too.
And an appropriate timing. And Jeremy, you need to be thinking.
Mark, would it be appropriate if they're going to pave it, so we don't have to tear up a road and repave it, to look at what the cost while the ground's open, to put a second line in through that area and stub it at each end?
That's going to be their responsibility as well, but I don't know how that works into their financial model. I know that they've done a tremendous amount of work to take and maximize the use of the special assessment area bond that we did with them to build certain infrastructure at different times. And so, for example, they have a pretty critical timeline to get this tank built, and I don't want to delay the tank because that's a pretty big incentive for them to
But
be
the
able to
second
make
tank
that.
will be built before their project's done.
It will be built before the project's done. It's just extending a quarter mile of pipe might be several $100,000.
Public Works, though, is fine with a hard surface of some sort in the meantime until the second line goes in before we pave it.
And hard surface doesn't mean paved.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy thinks hard surface means paved or concrete.
Well, according to the engineering standards, it's paved.
It has to be something that's plowable, because obviously for us to maintain access, we have to plow it so that vehicles get up there. So I think if you leave it to Brandon and me to work it out, we'll figure it out.
That's what you're going to do.
That works.
So I think my amended.
I did have more discussion. I'm not sure that the findings and conditions got included, and then there's one more up here.
Should we just start over?
You have to pull your motion.
All right, so the original motion plus a condition, all staff findings and conditions, adding a condition that staff work with the applicant to find an amenable solution to provide access that's acceptable to both parties.
I have a first.
Second.
I have an amended first from Councilman Wilden, an amended second
It
from
said staff
Councilman
findings
Porter.
and conditions.
This wasn't in the staff report. Number 6 wasn't in the staff report.
But he did say all staff findings and conditions.
I said all staff findings and conditions, and I added my own.
Oh,
But he says the rain
six one down at the bottom.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. All right.
Well, wait, hang on. That can, no. So that's different than what was in the report. The report is that it was going to be wrought iron style, not.
What?
So we didn't specify chain link or wrought iron, although we only ever talked about wrought iron.
Oh, 5, you're talking about.
On
Oh,
5.
I'm like,
While we're still in discussion, if we were to eventually change that, I would say if it's going to be within 500 feet.
I think we've got a lot of discussion on that, and I'm not amenable to that. And I'm certainly not amenable to razor wire, which almost necessarily goes with the chain link.
Well, in
So
any case, I'm saying.
I think we just leave it as wrought iron and call it
Yep.
good.
All right, so I'll try this again. Are we on the third amendment?
Yes.
Yes.
Adding another amendment, condition 6, that rain sensor sprinklers be added to the plans and weed barrier fabric be removed from the plans, and modifying condition 5, the type of fence shall be wrought iron style aluminum.
Okay, I have an amended first.
Second.
From Councilman Wilden, an amended second from Councilman Porter. Is
We
there
sure?
any further discussion? Wilden's about a minute shy of the longest motion.
It's not my fault.
Okay, with that, I will do a roll call. Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have the bid award for Patriot Park construction. Mark, it is good to see you here tonight. It has been.
By the way, my name is Mark Edwards.
You also go by Dr. Edwards, right?
So what I'm handing you is, here's probable cost. Would you? I'm good, thanks. I got one. Yep. So this was not one of our most successful bids since I've been here in the last 17 years. What I handed you today was, again, the opinion or probable cost for the Patriot Park. The far right column is the cost that our engineers were estimating for each of the line items.
We don't have an electric copy of this at all, right?
I don't believe we've sent that out. We just created this yesterday afternoon, so. And actually, I think I've dropped a column on this. Somehow I just noticed that. So maybe I can get your help if you have that up there. So what our intent, and I apologize for that, it just dawned on me. I dropped the column on what the bids actually came in at.
Yeah, I don't see that.
So I will give you the short version. We had a $10 million budget, and the park bid come in with all of the direct costs that we were going to spend on things like playground and site lighting and field lighting. Our costs come in about $14 million. So we are somewhere in the range of $3 to $4 million over budget on this. So, so what we did, Mark and I went through this yesterday afternoon. We could, if the council wanted to move forward with the S&L bid, we could move forward with it. We were going to have to do a budget adjustment, borrow some money from some of the 5-year general fund CIP for future projects. The other thing that we discussed was going back and changing some timelines, giving them more bids. We know that 2 bidders were just moments late in getting their bids submitted out of the 4. We don't know what those numbers are, so we only have the 2 bids that we have in front of you tonight from the 2 bidders. The one bid from Sunrock was just about 13 million. S&L was 11.5 is what their total bid comes down to. We think that if we rebid it, if we give some more time, if we kind of change some of the requirements, that we may be able to get a better price on it. In essence, this was bid so that the grass would be ready about the middle of next summer. We think that if we push that back and put a critical deadline on the sod so that the sod needs to be installed by, say, mid-September, that still gives it plenty of time to grow and establish itself so that we can still do our spring play on it. We think that we can get hopefully more bids and hopefully better bids. 2019, yes. So in either event, We weren't necessarily planning on fall baseball next year anyway, so pushing it back gives us a little bit more time. It also pushes us out of fiscal year so that we can collect another year's worth of impact fees on this project before all of the final bills would be finally due. So it gives us a little bit more time to collect a little bit more money as opposed to having to finish the payments in, say, July of next year. So it kicks it out a little bit longer for us to collect more revenues. It really comes down to you as a council. If you have a preference, we can lend ourselves the money from another fund. But these bid prices are pretty high. 2 bidders is a pretty shallow pool, and we would like to, I mean, we think that there's maybe some better numbers out there. And so to recommend, to make a recommend like this is always risky, because the next set of bids the next low bid may be $15 million, and we've walked away from, an $11.5 million bid. So it's always a challenge. We don't know. We don't have any guarantees, but fundamentally, we would like to maybe even ask some questions and say, why did they come out so high? The things that were very noticeable, if you compare the bids, the mobilization costs, usually they're something to the tune of about $10,000. Both of the bids came in about $500,000. And so it looked as if they were, building profit margins in that particular realm. And then both of them for compacting materials came in 3 times the price, about 3 times the price of what we were projecting, which we were projecting about $500,000-$600,000, and they came in at 1.5 on up to about 1.7 million.
I think it's good to add that we were trying to meet some goals to get this playable by fall of next year, for sure. Get this park established. We are bidding it in a really unfavorable climate right now. Everybody is just so busy right now. Although we were offering them winter work, there was just a few people that bid it, and that kind of has to scare you with a big budget like this, and just so few people bidding it. So I think that by pushing the bid out for another month or so, gives people not only some time to think about what they want to do for the this winter and possibly most of next winter to finish this up, give them more time to look at the project. There's only 4 bidders, although we had questions from 6 or 7 bidders during the bidding process. So maybe another few weeks of looking at this, giving us some more numbers, being able to contemplate this for a little longer time, to our advantage. So.
Comments from the council?
It's my understanding too that even some of the things that are included in this engineer's estimate aren't included in the bid, so there'd be some more expense above and beyond the.
So for example, the playground equipment, we pulled that out and we were just going to purchase that directly, and they were going to then install it. Well, for example, there's just some irregularities in some of those things, and so we could certainly move forward with this. We're certainly going to have to approach the apparent low bidder and say, look, it looked as if they were doubling the cost basically for like bleachers. So there's probably some savings that we can get, but we still felt like, as we did kind of a rough evaluation, if we pulled the entry sign, which was $100,000, if we pulled some of these things, we still felt like there was going to be a gap of about $1 million, $1.5 million at a minimum, and that's actually some of the numbers that are just really scaring us. So I think that it's a tough decision to make as a council, and we can move forward with this. We can make it work, but if we rebid it, we hope that we can get some better numbers that would allow us to be more within our budget and much more comfortable.
Well, and in all fairness, if we rebid it and it's higher, we can wait for a more favorable time.
Absolutely.
Puts baseball out a little further, but it's the prudent thing to do with tax dollars and
or we could carve it up and do a smaller portion. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we could move forward with this. It just seems like right now there's just not a great there was 2 other parks that got bid in the last 2 weeks. Eagle Mountain just opened a bid the day before us for about $3.8 million. I wasn't able to get Orm's numbers as you'd requested, but we'll certainly be looking at that, and we'll be doing some evaluation as we're putting this back out to bid to see if we were just flat off in our evaluations, or what might have helped trigger us being,
We did have a couple of contractors look at our prices. They We had some third-party reviews on this. We were pretty confident when we went in this bid, but it sure shocked us.
Go ahead, you already started.
So I just, for me personally, I am absolutely in favor of rebidding. I think that it's the prudent thing to do. I think that giving people an opportunity to really look at this a little bit more, getting out of their busier season, coming near the end of the summer, that kind of thing. I just also want to point out that I'm not sure in the bid if there's a way, like the lighting packages, the sign packages, are they pull-outable when they're bidding? Because those can be potentially be sponsored, and I'm hoping that we are going to have sponsors paying for those things.
Well, and in fact, we even were trying to project offsetting revenues for some of those items as part of that financial modeling to get it down to that $1.5 million gap, $1.6 million gap, just so that we could have some base numbers. We've already pulled those things out of this bid so that the contractor doesn't have to worry about the cost of the lights. We'll provide the lights. They would just work with us on getting the conduit and other things installed. So we've already done a lot of those kinds of things to try and do it.
So the new bidding will have that all part of it.
And this is 11.5 with those things pulled out. We've got $1 million light package, $250,000 worth of interior lights.
When it comes to lights and scoreboards and stuff, have you brought David up to speed with his background?
David is going to be working on trying to raise funds for some of those items, but we anticipated that in our calculations yesterday to try and say, how close are we with these numbers? You've got to remember there's a $600,000 land acquisition. There was other things that we've already paid for that are off the books and weren't part of this bid. This bid came in incredibly high.
Right, and so that's why I'm in favor of going to rebid.
David, you've got the direction you need from the council to go after some of this stuff, right? Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Why can't we be, I think that public-private partnership is a wonderful thing. If someone wants to sponsor the entry monument and they want to pay for half of it and there's a little plaque on there, I have no problem with that, because give me a break, then it makes it more their park anyway, and then maintenance on that, they're going to be more amenable to coming in and updating it, maybe even every year where we wouldn't. Maybe we'd be every 3, they're like, no, we want to come paint it every year, the baseball bat if you would, or whatever. But I just think that when you go to the theater at Sandy, there are like over 400 plaques on the wall with sponsors for their theater. You know what I mean? For their big amphitheater thing that they have. There's like Zion's is the big sponsor of it, and they gave a ton of money, and then there's all of these other sponsor plaques. I just think that it makes it a community event. Friends of the library, you go down there, there's lots and lots of names of people. So I think let's start getting creative. I absolutely think rebid for me personally, but then let's also engage our public relations, our economic development, and let's start working toward raising funds. Let's create a fundraising account for the field.
I think to Michael McComber's point, if we look at some sort of plaque on the walls, the founding families, when this came out, we filled this room full of people. We had emails in mass numbers of families that are sports families, whether it's lacrosse, football, soccer, baseball, that are looking forward to this complex that I think personally I would put in as one of the founding families. Because this is important to Saratoga's community as a whole.
So simultaneous. Obviously, we need to do this bid. We have to pay what we have to pay for, but if we can raise money.
It is a big enough gap, though, that that's a
You're not going to raise
sizable
$1 million, but we can raise a couple $100,000. Honestly, I think you could.
No, let's have faith. David can raise $1 million. Go, David.
Well, when you start taking into account the scoreboards, that starts to add up.
We added that in, though, and there's still that $1.5 million gap. So.
No, but the thing is they produce the scoreboard, but they can still pay for their logo being on that scoreboard.
Sure.
So what I'll do is, there's a couple thoughts that I'm having, and one, I'll just kind of tell you that a lot of times in these projects that I've worked for in the nonprofit world, when you're doing kind of these capital campaigns, you're doing it long before you even have concepts finalized. You're doing your major donor efforts and those sorts of things. So what I'm getting at is what I need to do is sit down with staff and really evaluate all the components of it and see what's reasonable, probably reach out to other municipalities that, like the example that you gave, see what efforts that, what types of things they have done. So my hope is to put together some sort of plan of how we're going to present it and market it out there and do that and be able to provide that to you guys. The only question I have is, do you prefer Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Pepsi.
We actually already do have a resident in the city who works for Coca-Cola. So.
Yeah, we have a
It's got to be different.
We have a Coca-Cola rep who said that we could work with him, David.
Let's say that again.
Cola rep, we could work with him.
Yeah, that, and that's part of it too, is you guys already have connections. And so we need to identify what we're going to have sponsored, what the levels are going to be at, put together some sort of packet that presents that nicely, and then we need to start talking about, well, who do we know and who can we connect with that would have a vested interest in this?
And I appreciate that. I mean, we brought this up a couple years ago, and obviously you have an expertise in this, and that's a great asset for us. And when we did the library, in a very short amount of time, we were able to raise quite a bit of money. So I think that you'll be surprised at Saratoga Springs, the generosity of the city, and also our sponsors, the businesses in the city as well.
And business owners that aren't here.
And the business owners, exactly. So I appreciate those efforts, and reach out to us too individually. We can give you the context of the people that we know. My neighbor was my neighbor across the street for 6 years, and he lives up the street from Jim, so thanks.
So am I hearing consensus about a rebid?
Well, I just said
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I will entertain a motion on that.
So do we reject these bids, or?
Yes. Reject and rebid.
I move that we reject the bids for Patriot Park construction, Resolution R17-73, based on the staff findings and conditions as outlined in the report, and request that we go out to rebid at the staff's discretion on when that is appropriate.
Second.
We have a first from Councilman McComber, a second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilwoman Barch?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Thanks for all your work on this, Mark.
Yeah, if I could, I think Mark and his staff and the planner, the consultants, and the Parks Committee has done an amazing job with this. It's just.
Don't run away yet, Mark.
So.
The other Mark's giving you good compliments.
Say it all again.
We just want to make sure that we build this the right way.
We do appreciate your team and the Parks Department for the input and all the work that's gone into this. So, okay, thank you. Okay, item 5, Austin Building Concept Plan, Todd Austin applicant.
Thank you. This is a request for review of the Austin Building Concept Plan located at 18 West Sargent Court on lot 102 of Phase 1 of the Sargent Court PUD plat. The proposal, you can see, this is Redwood Road, is just north of a previous concept plan that you saw for Peak Square Retail, so it's just barely north of that project. Proposal includes a 4,000 square foot building containing medical office on the ground floor and possible professional office on the second floor. This is contained within a PUD, which requires Planning Commission and council feedback during concept plan review. So here you can see the proposed building along Redwood Road and the proposed parking area. There are several comments that both staff and the DRC have made up to this point. Several of those comments are pedestrian connections required, including an ADA accessible route, as well as some issues with parking. And one of the other items on here, so right now this area is currently owned by the city. And as part of this proposal, the applicant is requesting that this be returned back to them to help them meet their landscaping requirements. It is a small site, and in exchange they will maintain this area. So it is a pretty small site, so they're having a little bit of a hard time meeting some of their landscaping options. This is also pretty consistent with what Peak Retail is requesting down below. Moving on, these are the proposed concept plan elevations. And And staff recommends the city council discuss the application and provide concept level informal feedback to the applicants before they apply for site plan. And the applicant is here if you have questions.
Start, Councilman Wilden. You look excited holding the mic.
I am very happy to give them back that property so they can make.
Wait, we're not there yet.
If they want to do some other parks too, I would consider that. Well.
Yeah.
Anything else? You know, just a concept. So as long as you meet the parking, work with staff to meet the parking, I'm okay with it. I mean, there's concerns with limited one access to this whole development, but we've already been down that path many times. Not going to go, well, I did go there, so I'm sorry. But it is what it is, and if you didn't have those vested rights, we'd probably require other things, but you do have vested rights, and as long as you meet the parking,
Okay, Councilwoman Barch.
So a couple comments and questions. First of all, Chief, you know, we have for subdivisions where they have to have a second access after 50 homes. We somewhat got messed up with this because of the stub to the north and all of that kind of stuff. Seriously, at what point do we say, you've got enough between all of the homes, all the extra businesses? When do we say, sorry, you can't do this until that other road is built, and require that northern road to be built?
On any situation that is compromising code and public safety. I have no problem doing that. I guess I would put it back, I guess, to you is, you know, I've done that in the past, had some concerns, and not necessarily this configuration of council, but I ended up being a wheel chalk as I got pitched under the bus. And so I guess, absolutely. I mean, it's there. I just is the support. Is there a willingness to support that as staff, as council, and mayor to have those more difficult discussions. You know, the discussions we've had in the past, as you know, the landowner to the north just told them, sing your song somewhere else. I don't want to hear it. I don't have to hear it. It is a concern. Even though we did get the additional width on the entrance, all of those things, it was simply a Band-Aid to a bad project to begin with. That had it come back, as we've talked before, had it come back today, never been. So, sorry I'm not helping you much, but,
No, it's okay. It's hard because obviously we don't want to put the burden of that northern road entirely on this particular developer, right? That wouldn't be fair to put the whole entire burden on them when the other subdivision or the other development that's just barely to the south of them isn't going to have to do it. And obviously, previous council entirety let it pass when the second phase of the housing went in. I just feel like this is getting more and more dangerous by the minute, literally, as more people move into that area. And honestly, if I were you, I would be concerned for your customers. That's just my comment on that. Please.
Can I point one thing out? So I'm not saying this was the right decision, but the code doesn't impose a second access requirement on commercial development. It's only for residential development. So that's something to consider as well. Another thing to consider is you have all the pieces in place for that connection to eventually get put in there with the code requirements of the interconnectivity, as well as the connection into the, what is that, the Western Hills project. That also has the stub into the property adjacent to
Yeah, that missing link.
property that this is adjacent to, so. And one other thing too, the applicant is here if you have any questions of the applicant. I'm not sure if you were aware of that, but I don't believe we've had a chance.
If we have questions.
As far as other comments, staff is taking care of, I think, most of the issues, so you're aware of the parking, things that you'll need to take up, and sounds like you've worked out your garbage, shared garbage and all those kinds of things. So I have no concerns about that. The one thing that I will say again, and we dealt with this with a little bit with the building to the south, excuse me, is this is part of a PUD and a mixed use. There is a requirement in our code that you have to match the architecture. And so I know that the one to the south has altered theirs a little bit. So I encourage you to get with staff and look at the existing office building to the north and look at the housing to the west of you, and you have to match those. Not perfectly, but you have to match those. You have to have those, it has to, same elements, the same feel, the same colors, in general, some of the same materials. It needs to match as part of the code. So that's one thing that I'll tell you. As it stands, I mean, the project itself is fine. As it stands, the elevations, the architecture, it's not going to fly. You need to read those a little bit. And like I said, get with staff on that because they've had to work with the building just to the south as well. So.
An offer on the property? But I'm already in the building that's just to the north of me, and I've been in Saratoga Springs practicing for about 9 years, and so I've been renting from Garn McMullen, who's the owner of that other building, and I would like to, you know, instead of paying rent, start doing my own building. And I'm well aware of the road access because I deal with it 2 times a day, and so, but from a standpoint of a developer, I don't have, you know, the money to do another road.
And like I said, it wouldn't be fair to put all that burden on you when it's been passed over from the second phase of the housing and from the other office. That's not fair. I get that.
And I would like to change the drawing. I mean, I want to make it look good so that it fits with everything. But like I say, the big thing with me is I have some deadlines on financing on whether I close on the lot or not close on the lot. And if as a council, if you don't want to have that land back, then the property's not worth building on for me.
I don't think that's a problem. We've done that with the building to the south. The land.
Just that strip of land. That's the main thing.
From what I can tell with staff, there'll still be room if UDOT decides to come in and widen Redwood Road again, that they would still have the room to do that. So I don't think they'll do that with Mountain View Corridor, but you never know. So I don't think it's a problem.
Okay.
So anyway, those are my only comments on the project. So
and instead of the Lehigh Fairfield Road, you could call it the Nephi Fairfield Road.
Oh, that's
that
much better.
You've already voted on it. So.
That gets very historical then, doesn't it? So I just wanted to give a quick comment. I think that the project itself looks great. I think, you know, fixing the parking, again, I'm not going to, for me personally, I'm not going to put all the burden fixing the access on that on you. But just know that that is part of the plan, that we have things in code now, in the rules, that when that development goes to the north, they have to connect to it. And so that will help dramatically. And then obviously Aspen Hills Boulevard is planned to have a light eventually, and so then that'll give you access to a light as well. So I think just long term, you have, I just trying to help you understand the investment that you're getting into. We are looking at long-term solutions. It's just the immediate, it's not ideal, obviously, and so, you know, working with your customers, have them go up and just do U-turns and things if they need to and stuff. But for me, I'm absolutely okay with the land going back to you, and as long as you meet the parking, I think you're going to have a good location there.
Okay, thank you.
Porter, do you have anything?
No, I think the one thing I noticed was already brought up by Councilwoman Barge was just I remember you mentioning it with the peak retail, and so I figured that this was probably going to be the same. I don't have any particular issue with the elevation, however, I guess it has to match with surrounding buildings. So, so yeah, and then as far as the, you know, just take care of the access and stuff, I'm okay with letting you maintain the land.
Okay. I will entertain a motion. Concept plan. Okay.
Good luck.
Good luck. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a traffic calming policy, Resolution R17-74.
Mayor and council, if you'd like to table this, you're certainly welcome to do so.
What'd you say, Mark?
If you'd like to table this, just for the sake of tabling it.
I object. We want you to come back every single
You're
week.
so funny. I have to admit, I did take 2 naps during the traffic calming policy reading. It was more of this traffic calming policy, because
it's very calming.
It was very calming. Yeah.
This is only 21 pages, Councilman McComber. And most of them are pictures.
I'm just teasing you.
It was the pictures that got to him.
Okay.
He needed pop-outs too, you know.
Hey, Gordon.
Mayor and council, it's my pleasure to be with you and talk about traffic calming. So from time to time, we get requests throughout the city for something to be done about traffic safety with regard to speeding, congestion, and so forth. And so the purpose of this policy is to try to put together some sort of objective approach to analyzing each one of these situations, and so that we're not simply responding to public clamor. Comments that I received from you, it's been some time ago, but one of them was to include some sort of scoring mechanism in here. So that point was well taken. I've included that, and so what that allows us to do is to compare one situation with the other, and allows us to make objective recommendations to the council about traffic calming measures that are employed, and an important reason for the objectivity and the prioritization is because some of these traffic calming measures would involve city funds.
So if I could, Mayor and council, we've kind of gone through this quite a bit. Do you want us to go through in a lot of detail, or are you ready to move forward with taking action on it?
Same here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's done a great job.
Give him the Cliff Notes version tonight.
Okay, so I was practically there.
Take that, Mark.
Wait. We're taking that from an engineer, so I don't know.
Hey, I'm on Gordon's side here. You let Mark talk for 15 minutes, but he can't even give a 2-minute introduction.
Are you feeling jealous that he's out doing an attorney?
So I have here what seems to me to be a good approach, having incorporated comments from the past. So would hope that you would choose to employ it, or give comments that I can change, and we can employ it thereafter. I'll sit down here if you have any comments.
Perfect. Councilman McComber would like to go first.
So I was teasing. Yours didn't put me to sleep. But I really do like what you put together here. I think the grading system that you came up with is outstanding. I think that it'll help keep it as a level playing field. It'll keep people from being the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. We have certain people who complain, and they always get all the especially our speed radar little trailer that gets pulled behind. And certain areas are getting it more than others because they complain more, and there really is no mechanism to say, here's the prioritization based on this. It's going to be here for the next 3 months. You can have it again in 4 months, whatever it is, right? So I really like the approach. I also thought the metrics were seemed more, I don't want to use the word palpable, realistic to me. So how some of the different numbers that you were putting in the counts and things in the metrics. So again, I thought it was great, and I was happy to be able to read it where I missed it last time. It was purely just because it wasn't in the packet separate. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Wilden.
I think you did a great job on the metrics, and the reason why I like those is it just adds transparency, so that when people are requesting things, it depoliticizes it a little bit, and it gives them the transparency to know this is why we may be doing something, why we may not. So I don't think these were really in here in much detail. So conceptually, you've added a lot and it looks great. So I'm ready to move forward.
Councilman Porter?
I would just agree that I think making it an objective, so many times when we hear about these things, it's a very subjective, they're scared for the safety of their children, and so we get a very emotional response or a very subjective, feel for, oh, it's just, people are just driving too fast. And I'm guilty of the same thing. I shake my fist at people as they drive past my house, so. But I think that.
Where do you live? You hate the name of your road and everyone drives by your house.
On a drag strip.
He doesn't shake his fist, he gives them the one finger salute.
But I think having an objective scale where we can say, look, this is the criteria and this is when action will be taken and this is what action should be taken at what point, I think is beneficial, both for the residents and for the city. So, great job.
Kelly?
Yeah, just thank you for helping us and for listening to, both us and also to the residents, because I know this is, as an engineer, what should and shouldn't happen and all of that, but it helps us to be able to explain it. It helps the residents more easily to be able to see what happens when, and I think it's fantastic, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon, for taking the council's feedback, residents, staffs. As was mentioned earlier, the transparency for residents to understand the matrix that are used and allow us also to be able to quantify that in our minds as we go throughout the city on various points. Thank you. You've done a great job.
My pleasure.
Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the traffic calming policy resolution R17-74 dated today.
I'll second that.
I have a first from Councilwoman Barch, second from Councilwoman McComber. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Barch?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Can we add this to the newsletter? Sorry, can we make sure that this, so when people have, like, we can say, if you have an issue or whatever, please reach out. We have an approach that can help identify areas. A traffic issue. So let's get that in the newsletter. Maybe let's start using this tool. Thank you.
Okay. UDOT Betterment Agreement number 4, Redwood Road widening and Pioneer Crossing continuous flow interchange.
Mayor and council, pretty straightforward. We've done 3 of these to date. This 4th one covers a few drainage items, such as we're sharing with a facility on 4th North, the ditch on the north side. UDOT will be tying into that, and they'll be providing us some compensation so that we can pipe that in the future. We'll be cleaning the stormwater as part of the park construction, because they'll be improving the frontage when we baseball park there. So some more stuff related to that project. Actually, I think construction is starting sooner, just starting. They're probably mobilizing and stuff like that. So questions, we're happy to answer them.
Perfect. Are there any questions on this betterment agreement? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the UDOT Betterment Agreement number 4, Redwood Road widening and Pioneer Crossing continuous flow interchange, resolution R17-76 dated today.
I'll second.
I have a first from Councilman Porter, a second from Councilman Wilden. Any further discussion on the motion? We'll do a roll call. Councilman McComber?
Aye.
Barch?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Adoption of the City of Saratoga Springs Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan.
So, Mayor, pleasure to bring this before you tonight. It's pretty straightforward. I know it's 142 pages of interesting stuff, but it's a necessary process that we have to go through to make ourselves eligible to apply for FEMA grant funding and receive it. We've actually applied twice and been turned down on both of those occasions because this plan did not exist and was not adopted specifically by our community. That said, we are one of the first communities at this level to have a plan at this level locally. Most everybody relies on county plans. They're very broad, non-specific, but this actually identifies our needs specific to, excuse me, Saratoga Springs. And with your adoption, the state's recommendation to FEMA, I don't foresee too many issues of it not being accepted by them. So you don't have any concerns or questions?
I would just say I think this is an important thing for the community, emergency. Thank you for working through this, and I think it can give our residents some level of reassurance.
I would agree. I think it's, you know, given some of the unique hazards that we face, given, you know, our wild land borders, as well as being next to the lake and seismic activity and stuff, I think it's important that we have something that's tailored to our city rather than to the entire county, which they tend to focus on their stuff. And so, so I think it's great. I'll climb up on my hobby horse for a second, reiterate, I think that as a council, we need to get some training as far as incident management, so that we can be prepared in the unfortunate event if something happens. But so I would again, you know, think that we should look into doing that on a semi-regular basis.
Well, with this, one of the things we are working on in conjunction with this plan is we are in the process of redoing our emergency operations plan for the city, and part of that understanding is we will come out of that and actually exercise the plan at the very level that you're speaking of. So that is in the works.
That would be great. I think it would be beneficial. So, you know, I don't want us to be caught flat-footed if something horrible does happen where we don't know what to do and what our role is.
And the biggest thing is there are specific roles and responsibilities that you as council need to fulfill, and I think making sure that you're solid with those is absolutely helpful.
I was going to harass Councilman Porter that some of us already got that by the seat of our pants, and just because he's a newbie.
I realize that, but it doesn't hurt to refresh.
No, I know. Just teasing. No, thank you, Chief. I appreciate this. This is something we've talked about in MAG also, and the necessity of doing this on a local level as well. So thank you.
So, for example, some things are already in works. We're met with Sterling. We're getting the numbers together to one of the first grants that we're going to be applying for here in very short order is emergency power generation for our pumps, for our wells. So, yeah.
Chief, just really quick, thank you. When you came to the city, one of the kind of mandates from the council was that you took our fire department to the next level, improved professionalism. This is just proof of the continuation of your hard work and your crew's hard work. I think they've made something that all of Saratoga can be proud of now, and they work hard at it and they deserve it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And again, the kudos goes to them. They are the ones that are implementing, so
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt on that. Can I add something to that? I got a voicemail forwarded to me. The chief's not going to toot his own horn, but a gentleman out of San Diego got in an accident recently, and he left a very long voicemail about the level of service that the fire department and fire and police provided. And he left his phone number and everything. He just wanted to know is exceptional and beyond anything he had experienced in the past. So just to add to what you were saying there.
David, those are the kind of things too, and I don't know if you've done this already, but if we can get those kinds of things, make sure that it's disseminated to our officers and to our firefighters so that they know of that appreciation. I think that's really important. And not obviously not necessarily post the whole thing on social media, but just talk about, you know, gratitude or
certainly. And not to digress too much, but I'm meeting with all the different department heads to identify those sorts of things, both internally and externally, and so that's along lines of what I'm thinking as well.
Yes, our first responders are both very amazing, and you guys have done a wonderful job in bringing those departments to the next level and keeping them growing with the city at an appropriate pace. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the Saratoga Springs Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan, Resolution R17-77, dated today.
I'll second that.
I have a first from Councilwoman Barch, second from Councilwoman McComber. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call. Councilman Wilden?
Aye.
McComber? Barch?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'll entertain a motion on the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes for June 20th and July 10th of this year with all of the changes that were provided previously.
Second.
I have a first from Councilman McComber, second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion? Barch?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Mark, do we have need for closed session tonight?
I move that we go into closed session.
I have a first.
As outlined on the agenda.
Outlined on the agenda. I have
Second.
first. I have first from Councilman McComber, second from Councilman Wilden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Guess I haven't heard from you either way. Okay, thank you. We will take a short 5-minute break to stretch legs.
Thanks, Mark.